Members, we're dealing with order of the day number 3, the Perth Major Sporting Stadia Bill 2009, and I give the call to the Honourable Ian Garlett.
I move to introduce a bill, the Perth Major Sporting Stadia Bill 2009, and that it be read a first time.
Members, the question is the bill be read a first time. Those of that opinion say aye. Aye. Against no. I think the ayes have it. The Honourable Ian Garlett.
Yeah.
I actually just the clerk want to read it.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Clerk want to.
A bill for an act to implement the recommendations of the Perth Major Stadia Task Force. First reading.
The Honourable Ian Garlett.
Mr. President, the Honourable Ian Garlett. In 2005, the Western Australian Gallop government spent millions of dollars establishing a Stadia task force which would provide recommendations and the possibility of an implementation of a Stadia in Perth in the future to service the Western Australian community. In 2008, after the election of the Barnett Liberal government, the WA Parliament has placed less emphasis on this report. It is the opinion of my own, as well as the Western Australian Youth Parliament, that certain recommendations be adopted and enforced by the Western Australian Government, and such expenditure of taxpayers' money should not be wasted. Western Australia is a proud sporting state with sports such as AFL, rugby, netball and cricket all widely supported. Currently, the biggest rectangular stadium in WA is Members Equity Stadium, which has a capacity of 18,156.
Shame.
With Australia pressing to host the 2018 or 2022 Soccer World Cup, it is essential that Perth has a rectangular stadium with a capacity of 40,000 to hold host to games during the World Cup by World Cup regulations. The benefits of this bill will be manifold. Direct benefits will be more international and big-ticket sporting matches such as rugby, soccer and cricket, and more chance big bands come to Perth. Well, imagine U2's disappointment when they couldn't come to Perth due to the lack of such an arena. Indirect benefits include the growth of business around the stadia, such as restaurants, pubs and retail clothing stores, etc. And the biggest incentive to play and undertake the sport. Imagine young children imagining to emulate the rock stars and superstars that they can see perform at this new stadium. In 2006, when Australia qualified for the World Cup by defeating Uruguay, it was found that more children were undertaking sports such as soccer due to this popularity. And the wonders of the children if they were able to see their national team play in their home city more often. The costs are significant, but the benefits far outweigh them, such as economic benefits and social benefits, such as reducing obesity for kids to get involved in sport. The fact is that such a project will be better in downturns, as inflation is much worse during a boom time. We need this multi-purpose stadium ASAP. If we delay, we may miss the chance of hosting our World Cup. And if we can get the stadium built in time for the event, the WA economy will prosper from the tourism and the additional expenditure.
Members, the question is the bill be read a second time. The Honourable Dylan Caporn.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Honourable Dylan Caporn. I'd like to begin today with a quote from the YP News, the fabulous publication that it is. And I quote the Shadow Minister for Child Protection, the Honourable George O'Keefe, labelling yesterday's castration legislation as unresearched and populist. Now, I don't doubt that this bill has been thoroughly researched, Mr. President, but I'm labelling it populist, Mr. President.
Order.
I'm labelling it not prostitute. I'm labelling it populist, Mr. President, due to its appeal. Ladies and gentlemen, if you put a stadium in front of the people, what are they going to say? We want it. But they have no consideration, Mr. President, of the economic viability of this stadium. The stadium costs $428 million to build, plus associated infrastructure. And this is defined in clause in clause number 15, where they state that a sports entertainment hub, Mr. President, will be built alongside the stadium, where residential, commercial, retail, cultural and dining opportunities to enhance the experience of going to the game. Now, don't get me wrong, if this includes pubs where fights can start, and I'm quite intrigued. I'm quite intrigued, Mr. President.
Order, members. The mover of the motion was heard in silence, and the response should be heard in silence as well.
And I'm intrigued, Mr. President, as how they're going to get houses next to this fabulous stadium. You'll have soccer balls coming over. You'll have loud evenings. Mr. President, these will be some very unhappy constituents. However, Mr. President, it's not just an idea that the bill itself is rubbish. It's an idea that you propose to destroy Subiaco Oval. This is the home of the WAFL, the West Coast Eagles, Fremantle Dockers. I'm glad the Honourable Opposition Leader has such an approval of the team, seeing as he's from a completely different country. And I state...
Mate, I know more the game than you, mate. I know how it works. You probably don't.
I also state that before we get a stadium, we need a public transport system that will be improved. At the moment, it is unreliable. And if the sporting codes want it so badly, Mr. President, why don't they chip in for it?
Yeah.
Members, the question is the bill be read a second time. The Honourable Lewis Richards.
Mr. President, Honourable Lewis Richards. Now, has a strong sporting community. We have adequate teams in Western Australia, such as West Coast Eagles, Fremantle Dockers, Perth Glory, WA Western Australian Warriors, West Coast Fever, the hopefully soon to be Western Australian Reds in the Rugby League. We have various football codes in cricket, and they're the most popular ones. However, the quality of stadiums in Western Australia, Mr. President, is quite appalling compared to the eastern states. Eastern states have minimum stadiums of 25 to 30,000. We only have one stadium in Western Australia, which even exceeds this. And they have millions. They have Telstra Dome, they have FEF Stadium, they have the MCG. But we're a sporting stadium. We need this. We need a stadium which is adequate so we can get these big events. How often has people complained to the press that likes of bands such as U2 and other bands who go, oh sorry, no, I won't go to WA because there isn't enough demand, Mr. President. Recently, Australia announced a bid to hold a 2018-2022 FIFA Football World Cup, which I say has a great advertisement by Mr. Rudd and co. But the Football World Cup FIFA regulations, Mr. President, state that a stadium must have a minimum and exceed 40,000 capacity for a game to be hosted during this World Cup. There's only one stadium in WA which has that, Subiaco Oval. And I know by facts that FIFA has already rejected the fact that WA and South Australia will not host it because the stadiums aren't adequate enough to hold it. It's too far away from the ground at Subiaco Oval because it's oval and you need a rectangular. The actual safety standards of Subiaco Oval does not fit with FIFA standards because apparently the fire exits and the exit is atrocious there, Mr. President. A multi-purpose stadium must be built and finished with these 10 years to guarantee Perth can hold the greatest sporting event in the world. Likes of America, likes of Germany. America didn't even play football before the 1994 World Cup. They got the World Cup. Now it's one of the biggest played sports in that country. This has helped rugby stay in WA. There's recent reports saying Western Force might have to move east because the standard of the stadiums and the quality of the infrastructure in Western Australia cannot uphold them. Let these Western Force people who lost their membership due to the distance from the stand and the appalling conditions at Subiaco Oval, let's keep them here. Let's get the likes of Matt Gitto and Drew Mitchell coming over here, the stars of the game, just because there's not enough the quality of the stands, not quality of the people. Let's get them keeping here. Now the big stadium would draw the big bands as well. As I said, U2, this may not be a universal agreement about the quality of the bands, but U2 was one of the major bands which left Perth because they said there wasn't enough demand. Only Robbie Williams stayed here, which is one of the biggest British and therefore most Perth enjoyable artists. He had to have 4 or 5 concerts at Subiaco Oval just so he can come here, just to make it economically viable for him to come here. Now, there's social and economic benefits. There's direct and indirect benefits. With any infrastructure bill, and anyone knows the economics, there is direct and indirect benefits. The direct benefits will be jobs. There'll be the Western Australian iron ore will be in demand. We'll be helping ourselves with this bill. And I think the opposite government on the other side there, I don't want to stipulate with party lines, but you know, Liberals and opposition, most government people are not afraid. They're afraid of debt. They don't like deficits, Mr. President. Well, deficits are actually mainly universally, because economics is not a universal agreement social science, is that deficits, when used in infrastructure purposes, is viable, Mr. President, in an economic downturn. So I'll explain why. Economic downturn, growth has decreased. The demand for nominal wages has decreased as well. Real wages tend to fall if possible. So you've got less wages, that means less cost to build. So let's say, we're in a boom time, Mr. President, like we did a couple of years ago. Nominal wages in Perth were one of the highest in the country, over 50, 60,000. That's like compared to 10, 15 years ago, that was like nearly double the average amount, Mr. President.
Added to the cost bar.
Yeah, and of course, you added demands from the likes of China and foreign nations. This would have driven up the price, demand and supply, bang. So it's going to go up. So let's suggest that we're going to build a stadium where the costs are going to be higher. So, oh no, that surplus is gone. There's no problem with deficits, Mr. President, when it's used for infrastructure purpose. And the indirect benefits of this bill and the stadium, we're going to have businesses growing around it. We're going to have likes of the shadow minister for health who owns a business in Bunbury. He could have the opportunity to get more demand if he decides to move there. We've got businesses. We've got the likes of clothing. We've got the likes of restaurants, pubs, even though they do probably cause social offence if regulated badly. And we have the likes of things which can be grown as well. So let's have a massive direct benefit. And of course, another economic turn is the multiplier effect. One person's income is one person's spending is another person's income. So I've got $1,000 and I'm going to go to a game. I'm then going to spend it on tickets, on going to the restaurants, going to things around it. Now these restaurants and businesses, I'm going to pay their staff. These staff are then going to spend that money. And it grows and grows and grows to one infrastructure or one input of money becomes a substantial amount, Mr. President. So to conclude, we need the stadium. There is no guarantee that we need a stadium. The effects which the government have an opinion and a matter with, Mr. President, is the timing. We believe, the opposition, that we need to commence this and, if possible, built within the next decade, so we can, if we get it, and there's a very good chance in 2022 we will get the World Cup, as there's never been a World Cup in Oceania, and they do like to, the FIFA do stipulate that they want to have each continent in the world holding a World Cup. We can guarantee that we have the infrastructure. We can then grow tourism. We have all these people, other countries coming to Perth. Isn't that what we want? Tourists of Western Australia, they've said that they've put all these advertisements out, but no one's coming. This will give an incentive for people to come and then look at the wonders of the pinnacles, the good old bell tower, the good old Ferris wheel, and of course you've got the likes of Shark Bay, and like the beauty of Cape Lewin and Augusta and Albany, it depends how you pronounce it. So we need this bill, and we need it done as soon as possible, Mr. President.
Members, the question is the bill be read a second time. All those in... thought someone was going to try and get my call. The Honourable Josh Renier Blino.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Honourable Josh Blino. We do need a stadium. Like, we don't really have a stadium, but we honestly cannot do it now. It is simply not economically viable to have a stadium now. It will cost, stated in the official report, $480 million minimum to build a new stadium. That excludes completely the cost of the proposed entertainment hub as well.
Now, the current surplus is only about $400 million. So this will single-handedly put us into a budget deficit. And the honourable member that is now left said that a deficit is not necessarily a bad thing. Well, why would you want to have money owing? It's always good to rather have a surplus than a deficit. And the government is already spending this surplus on infrastructure, which will create jobs, and the multiplier effect, which you mentioned, will still be in effect. Rather, we should spend this money, instead of on even more infrastructure, on something such as hospitals, which we do need. We recently celebrated Princess Margaret Hospital for Children's 100th birthday last week. A hospital for children which is 100 years old can hardly be called sufficient, and there's a shortage of beds that we constantly hear about. Also, jobs and iron ore and everything that he was talking about, which the stadium will produce demand for, this will also be the same if we build hospitals, which is much smarter to build than a new stadium. Yeah.
Members, the question is the bill be read a second time. The Honourable Luke Ellery.
Mr. President, the Honourable Luke Ellery. Time has always been an enemy, and time is not right in this bill. It is not viable, it is not reasonable, it is not logical to propose to build a stadium within 5 years. We need at least 10. Does anyone in this chamber realise we are in an economic downturn? The economy is going down. You cannot hide the fact. Sure, we have. Yes, and that is why the growth has slowed. We're in a downturn, that's the problem. But the problem is, why a stadium? The stadium is not the answer. It is not the most efficient use of the money. We need more time to be able to plan this. I understand that the Honourable Ian Gartlett wants this stadium to be something that truly wows the people who are in there. And we think that if the stadium went through, it should be able to wow people. But you cannot wow people with 5 years of planning and building. It needs more time.
Order, members.
Okay? It is just not viable. In a downturn, you cannot fool anyone that a stadium is a luxury good. It is extravagant. Extravagant.
Order, members. I can't hear the speaker, and if there was Hansard listening to this, I'm sure they couldn't hear him either. The members of the opposition have been heard in relative silence this afternoon, and they should allow the members on the other side to be heard in a similar state. The Honourable Luke Ellery.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, what message does it send to the people of Western Australia when, during an economic downturn, we are building a multi-million-dollar stadium? How do they feel? How do they feel? Now, I refuse...
Order. I don't know if the Honourable Christine Hamilton-Prime heard my last comments. I don't know if I need to repeat them, but members for the North Metropolitan have a bad reputation in this House for interjecting. The Honourable Luke Ellery.
Mr. Speaker, I refuse to believe the opposition when they try to deceive me into quoting the multiplier effect of this stadium. The multiplier effect applies to any infrastructure project, and the fact is that building a stadium is not the most efficient use of multi-million dollars. The fact is, if you spent it on hospitals, you are guaranteeing people's health. Now, I do not know what the opposition values, but I value the health of Western Australia over their entertainment any day. There is a shortage of beds. How can you condone that in saying that us hosting a World Cup is more important than those sitting on deathbeds? Yeah. Shame! Shame on the opposition! Yeah. Shame. Mr. Speaker, this is also, the economic viability is just atrocious. They are wasting stadiums. In building a stadium, to replace Subiaco, not necessarily knock it down, but to act in its place, they are wasting the use of Subiaco, the WACA and Members Equity Stadium. If this stadium were to be built, then there would be decreased use of all the other stadiums, and that is a waste of the time and resources that went into those stadiums. To quote Colin Barnett, in reference to the budget, he said, "Fingers crossed to how long that will last. Fingers crossed to how long a budget will last." The state budget. Figures and statistics. The state budget, a request to be heard in silence. Mr. Speaker, states and the federal budget show that forecast by 2012 that we will be in a deficit. It is not viable and the timing is not right for this stadium.
Members, the question is the bill be read a second time. I'll give the call to the Honourable Michael Bovell.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Honourable Michael Bovell. I thank the Honourable Member Luke Ellery for debating the health benefits of this bill. Studies in Australia show that 47% of women and 63% of men are overweight or obese.
And how does the watching the football make them lose weight?
They want to get
The Honourable
involved.
Member, I'll get to that point. Australians are at the point in cultural development where it is almost normal to have a weight problem than not. People who are overweight have higher rates of death and illness compared to those in a healthy weight range. Obesity is due to an imbalance between energy intake through diet and energy expenditure, and energy expenditure through physical activity. Technologies have been developed causing us to partake in less physical activities. Building this new stadium will encourage Western Australians' culture to develop. Sports stars will influence children, and adults will become more active in sporting activities, which will lead to greater long-term health benefits. Sports participation provides other lessons to improve diet, such as anti-smoking, which will reduce health and social costs. Thank you, Mr. President.
I'll give the call to the Honourable Lauren Goodhart.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Honourable Lauren Goodhart. It seems to me that the Honourable Government are too stuck up to see the entertainment value in this bill. I can guarantee you, if you go to the Subiaco Oval now, when people are there and interview the public, see what they want, they need a new stadium.
That's why it's a populist bill.
But is that not what we're here for, to serve the community?
So why didn't you approve the child protection bill? That was populist as well.
Order, members. The Honourable Lauren Goodhart.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I say carpe diem, seize the day, because you know what? A nuclear plant might blow up next week. We might have the chance to build it then.
Seize the day and you don't need to get euthanized.
I give the call to the Honourable Amy Leathersich.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Honourable Amy Leathersich. In order to build a new stadium, we are replacing Subiaco Oval. This is the home of West Coast Eagles. It's the home of the Dockers. It's where one of Australia's national sports is the footy, and that's where we play at Subiaco Oval. It's the home of our local teams. It's an icon, and by replacing it, you lose it. When we tried a few years ago, they tried to rename Subiaco Oval. There was an outrage, there was uproar about the naming it. Imagine what it'll do in the public if you replace it.
It's an icon, but it can't be used anymore. It's too old.
Our heritage is old. Think of how old this parliament is. You want to get rid of us?
Order. If the Honourable Georgia O'Keefe wants to get the call, I'm happy to give it to her if she stands in her place. The question is the bill be read a second time. The Honourable Vlada Lemak, did you want the call? You jumped earlier, that's all. Were you seeking the call or? following this debate could be confusing.
What the Honourable Government doesn't actually realise is that debt can be a good thing. Infrastructure construction is much cheaper in an economic downturn. You have labour, construction materials are labour, are cheaper. Labour is cheaper, and it's easier, it's quicker to build. Not only that, okay, all right, the Honourable Government, Mr. President, the Honourable Government is bringing up the idea of we should build a lot more, hospitals. That's all they're saying here. What they fail to realise is that Fiona Stanley Hospital is already being built on South Street in Murdoch. Quite frankly, Mr. President, it is time for Western Australia to have a new stadium. Not only will it increase tourism, it'll establish a cultural and sporting centre. It'll be attractive for international bands. It will be attractive for other international events. And not only that, but it is. You cannot refute that in this country, in this state, we have a sporting culture. We need a stadium to hold these sports events. It's inadequate. We need something that is new, that is able to hold more than 18,000 people. It's not enough. Not only that, but the current infrastructure that we have in place does not comply with safety and fire regulations. We can't actually hold FIFA even if we wanted to, even if we got it. We need the tourism that FIFA would bring to Australia and to Perth, the attention, the economic benefits cannot be matched. We need something, not only that, we need something to be proud of. The Libs made the bell tower. I mean, come on, look, we need something that is big. We need something that shows how much we value sport in this state. We need something that we can look at and say...
Members, just to let the Honourable Tammy Ann Caldwell know, I have you on the list for the next call. So you will get your chance.
Just to wrap up... To quickly wrap up, Mr. President, we need this stadium. It is the best thing that can happen to our state.
Members, the question is the bill be read a second time.
Just like health protection bill.
All those in... The Honourable Kate Novelli.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Honourable Kate Novelli. Now, the economic benefits of building this stadium are irrefutable, but what the opposition has failed to demonstrate today is how they will result in the generation of $428 million worth of income and employment. Now, the fact that the government needs to invest in infrastructure is also undeniable, but that investment must occur in the key areas of health, education and public infrastructure. These are the areas that will result in employment long term. These are the areas that will result in long-term employment. Teachers will be employed for years. Public health officers will be employed for years. People who work on building sites for 5 years, 10 years will not. It will not result in mass employment. It will not result in mass income generation, where investment in these key areas will.
Members, the question is the bill be read a second time. The Honourable Rachel Moles.
The Honourable Rachel Moles. There is no point in building a multi-purpose stadium if no one can access it. The bill targets a public transport use of 50 to 70%, but ignores the fact that public transport is not of high quality. It is unreliable. It is a common occurrence for buses to be late or not turn up at all, and also overcrowding. And also overcrowding of public transport deters people from using it. Unless public transport is improved, the stadium will not reach its full potential, as lower crowds will be drawn to events due to lack of quality transport available at this current time.
Members. The Honourable Gemma Lee.
I would like to know, why can't the sporting codes that need this stadium contribute to some of the money so that it can be spent in better areas? I mean, after all, the opposition has said that the money is better spent on a stadium than upgrading our ageing hospital system. Well, what is the point of bringing tourists to a state where the hospital system do not have sufficient facilities to maintain the health of those people who will be building the stadium, running the stadium, and running the pubs and bars that you are intending to put in?
Your health bill dealt with organ donations.
Members, the question is the bill be read a second time. The Honourable Sophie Burke.
Football game, even like this weekend, it's never going to be a full stadium. I mean, who's actually attracted to free? I go to them myself, maybe. Yeah. Anyway, so yes.
Order, members.
Sporting in Western Australia is a big part of society. We take our soccer and footy like pretty seriously. But do you think a new stadium is actually going to attract more people? But how can?
Order, members. Members. If the Honourable Sophie Burke directs her address to me, I'm sure the rest of the members will listen in silence.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. President, sorry. But how can we justify expenditure of more than $480 million when the money could be going towards something more important like cancer research or sending money to third world countries? Like that seems a little bit more than... If we already have stadiums that are adequate to our needs. Okay, well, if we're not filling up the stadiums, they're obviously already adequate enough. So Sorry, Mr. President.
No, you just address your comments to me, and the members on my left will give a bit more fire.
How can we justify spending more than $480 million when there's so many other parts of society that need to be targeted in an economic downturn?
Members, the question is the bill be read a second time. Those of that opinion say aye. Sorry. The Honourable Tammy Lee Caldwell.
President, the Honourable Tammy Ann Caldwell.
Sorry.
Yes, we are in an economic downturn. Yes, we have a deficit. Yes, we needed a 3% budget cut for the 2009 budget. And yes, the opposition wants to spend $400+ million on a sports stadium. This is astonishing. This morning, the opposition explained economic theories that say in an economic downturn it is imperative for the government to inject much money into infrastructure to enable the recovery of the economy. We accept this. But there are so many more important things, infrastructure things that the money should be spent on. This would both put money into things that save and improve lives and health and education and safety, and help us get out of the economic downturn by injecting government money into our infrastructure. The Honourable Opposition is basically saying that having rock stars and sporting games are more important than schools, roads and hospitals. It's shameful. The biggest children's hospital, as an honourable fellow colleague said, PMH, turned 100 last week. The Royal Flying Doctor Service, an essential service that saves people's lives, including my own, yet the RFDS must rely on donations for new equipment and for new planes. This is wrong. Nearly all WA regional towns are crying out for improvements to the safety of their regional roads, on which 30% of major car accidents and serious deaths occur every year. Indeed, hospitals are small and crumbling across many regional WA towns. We don't all live in Perth. There is a whole another state out there with hospitals right across it, roads across it and schools across it that needs improvement. And the money needs to be injected to improving... Money needs to be projected into these things to improve this infrastructure. Research into cures and preventions of cancers and other illnesses should take precedent over sports stadiums. As we in this House discussed yesterday, we are running out of coal and it is polluting our world. We need to find another way of making electricity, whether it be research and construct a nuclear power plant or renewable wind farms and solar power. This is our future. Sport is not as important as this.
Order, members. You may not like what you hear, but you have to listen.
You think that having sports and rock stars is more important than having a future. As we established yesterday, we all are very concerned with child protection, but the current methods are not working. Money should be spent in this area to protect our children. The list of vital, much more important things that money must be spent on for our future, our safety, our education and our health. I will reiterate a very important point a fellow honourable member made. This is a multi-purpose stadium, meaning many different sports can be played there. Sporting clubs have millions of dollars. If they want it so bad, they should contribute a few million each to the construction, so the government isn't taking $400 plus million, so the government isn't taking this money from hospitals and roads, which equal health and safety, and wasting it on a sports stadium.
The Honourable Christine Hamilton Prime.
I thought the members would have, opposite me, would have read the report properly. The report states that the sports entertainment hub is paid for by the private sector. Therefore, the government won't go in as much debt.
Whilst I always enjoy a healthy interjection, I think there's getting to be just a few too many. And can I remind members that you're probably best not trying to drown out members on your own side when they're on their feet. The Honourable Gemma O'Keefe.
I'd just like to point out that this bill is also for our health and safety. As we've already pointed out, it introduces children into playing sports, and the current Subiaco Stadium does not conform to fire safety standards, which means it is dangerous. The FIFA World Cup committee has said that they're not going to come to Perth because the Subiaco Stadium does not conform to fire safety standards. Not only this, but it is not suited for disability ramps.
The Honourable Luke Kovac.
10 years, both the WACA and the Subiaco Oval have been upgraded, and I use that term loosely, Mr. President, as they are still not adequate. Access to the grounds is difficult before, during and after the events. Catering facilities, highly inadequate. They do not meet the standards, and this should not allow them to serve food to the public as it is not fit for this public. Mr. President, it is also worth highlighting that the ageing of those facilities are putting the venue staff and the patrons at risk every time they enter those gates. This state needs to put its foot down and build a new stadium that is adequate and will assist the future of our sporting industry.
Members, the question is the bill be read a second time. Oh, Giorgio. Members, the question is... Yeah. Have you already spoken, the Honourable Michael Bovell? Just checking. Members, the question is the bill be read a second time. Those of that opinion say aye. Aye. Those against no. I think the ayes have it. Clerk.
A bill for an act to implement the recommendation of the Perth Major Stadium Task Force, second reading.
Members, we now move into committee on that bill.
The amendments have changed, and I don't think I have a new copy of them, but you do, so.
Members, we are dealing with the Perth Major Sporting Stadia Bill 2009, and the question is that Clause 1 stand as printed. Any member wish to speak to Clause 1? If not, I'll put the question that clause 1 be agreed to. Those of that opinion say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. Members, do members want to indicate whether they wish to speak to any clause before clause 5? Clause 4. Yes, all right. In that case, we'll move to, I'll just put the question for clause 3 first then. The question is the clause 3 stand as printed, I'll say clauses 2 and 3 stand as printed. Those of that opinion say aye. Aye. Against no. I think the ayes have it. Question now is that clause 4 stand as printed.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Honourable Dylan Capon. I move that we insert after with lower attendance the phrase after clause 5 has been commenced, so that the clause would then read, for adoption of major stadia. The state adopts the development of 2 major stadia that will accommodate the future needs for football, all codes, and cricket to provide, in addition, a smaller capacity stadium for cricket matches with a lower attendance after the clause 5 has been commenced. This amendment allows for an amendment in future, whereas we change the amount of time period between the commencement of the stadium. This is, so I move that we delay voting on clause 4 until voting on clause 5.
So you're moving that we adjourn clause 4 to a later stage. Okay. Members, the question is that we adjourn clause 4 till after clause, we'll actually put it after 16 so we can come back at the end. Those of that opinion say aye. Aye. Against no. I think the ayes have it. Members, we now move to clause 5, and the question is that clause 5 stand as printed. The Leader of the Government, the Leader of the House.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Honourable Dylan Capon. I move that we delete clause 5 and replace it with that the state government begin development on a new multi-purpose stadium within 10 years, so that the clause would then read that the state government begin development on a new multi-purpose stadium within 10 years.
Members, the member has moved that amendment. Does anyone wish to speak to the amendment? The Leader of the Opposition, the Honourable Lewis Richards.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. The Honourable Lewis Richards. Look, to commencement of 10 years can mean tomorrow, or it could mean in 2019. Because we find out in 2012 if we get the stadium or not. So, commend you for this amendment. However, it goes, we are not building the stadium just for the World Cup, the 2018-2022 World Cup. This is a future investment for the sporting industry of Western Australia. It goes out. Now, I can understand the arguments from the opposite government on the other side of this chamber about spending on health, spending on education. These are key issues. And if they would like to bring this up, they can do it in German debate. But we're talking about a sport bill here. We're talking about the stadium. And Mr. Chairperson, the key is that even with the other issue that we were going to do our implementation of the sporting bill, it would have cost actually more in excess of 425 million. So we actually went for the economically viable option when we wrote this bill for this economic downturn. So, actually, in fact, look, within 10 years of the commencement of the stadium, we could miss out on certain things. Who knows that certain bands will be around within 10 years, so 10, 15, 20 years, any band. There could be new bands, there could be old bands. There could be any bands. You never know, the whole music industry could be destroyed by a nuclear bomb because we made a nuclear mining thing in WA, and the whole WA industry could be destroyed, Mr. Chairperson. So how about we get this done as soon as possible, because as we said, in infrastructure, we won't be in a downturn forever. In 10 years, the cycle of a economic cycle, according to data in Australia, is 14 years. So every 7 years, first year there'll be for a boom, 7th year will be a recession, and so forth. So this will be out of this in a couple of years. So how about we can get this commenced and built within the 5 years? So the multiplier effect and infrastructure and the low cost can be essentially and kept low, because as we know, if it's going to take longer, which 10 years, so according to economic data, we'll be in boom by then. That means my higher nominal wages, higher costs for equipment because demand will be higher. So in fact, it's going to cost more and more. So this amendment's actually contradicted their opinion. And so they should look himself in the mirror and say, and look through this amendment, and although it goes, I can understand why he put 10 years, it is not correct, and it will not help this bill.
The Leader of the House, the Honourable Dylan Capehorn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson, the Honourable Dylan Capehorn. As I mentioned this morning, we have multiple reasons for extending the period from 5 to 10 years. The first is, of course, the fact that by 2012 the state will be in a deficit, which is something that the Leader of the Opposition is happy to be with, and I'm glad he is. Because, Mr. Chairperson, it is economically unviable to build a stadium within 5 years. And he's saying that you said in 7 years, Leader of the Opposition, we will be in a boom again.
According to economic data, yeah.
According to economic data, which means 2016, that's 2 years before the FIFA World Cup, and I understand, but that is obviously a target for what it's meant to be built for. However, 10 years allows for the period of red tape, planning, and architectural design that has to go into this building that is going to take more than 5 years.
The Honourable Michael Bovell.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Honourable Michael Bovell. The Honourable members opposite have asked how we can afford to spend $500 million. Over 20 years of operations, the extra tax revenue would only need to raise $25 million per year. The flow-on effects would more than offset the $25 million, not to mention the sale of the land surrounding the stadium to private investors for the entertainment hub. Thank you, Mr. President.
The Honourable Luke Ellery.
Mr. Chairperson, the economy is not the only reason we are arguing for 10 years. 10 years allows more time for planning. We really, if this stadium is to go through, we do want it, like Ian Gartlett has said, to really be a really good stadium. If you were to look through the bill into clause 16, it would state the stadium design, it goes on to say, an experience that enhances the patron's sense of arrival from the moment of arrival. We want this stadium, if it carries through, to be something that people look at and go, wow, that was worth coming. If it goes through, we want it to attract the tourists, which is why we need thought, planning and time put into this stadium. It also creates less strain on the economy. Now, let's not be deceived. The opposition is trying to let us know that we're in a trough. Economically, a trough is before an upswing. We are not. The economy is currently in a state called the downturn. We have not. Yes, I agree. And the fact is that it is most economical to spend in the trough, not in the downturn. Now, the trough, the downturn or the recession, as it will soon become, leads to the trough. And the trough is the economics. A study of economics will show that when the economy reaches the trough, the lowest it will fall. It will swing up because things are at the cheapest they can get and the most profitable. We are not at that stage yet, and it is not profitable now to build the bill. Give it time. Give it time. And economics says that this can be possible and something that can wow the people of Western Australia and hopefully the tourists it brings.
The Honourable Vlada Lamake.
Chairperson, the Honourable Vlada Lamake. The Honourable Member opposite seems to think that it's going to take 5 years just to plan and put in architectural designs and whatnot just for the stadium itself. Maybe if he was in power that might happen, but 10 years just to write down a couple of plans for a stadium. All this bill suggests is that in 5 years we start developing the stadium itself. The plans don't take, the 5 years, a stadium could actually be constructed in those 5 years. For instance, at the Mandurah line, which is a much larger project in terms of scale, was built in 6 7 years. And that was development and construction all included. A stadium of this size, 40,000 odd seats, would definitely not take 7 years to build. In this, yeah, exactly. In this, in this current climate, we're in a downturn. You cannot refute, Mr. Chairperson, you cannot refute the fact that construction is much cheaper. The construction materials are cheaper. The labour is easier to source and is cheaper in itself. It makes sense to build it now. It does not make sense to extend the development phase. The amendment for 10 years.
The Honourable Lewis Richards.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. The Honourable Lewis Richards. It's understandable. Bit stadiums can be architected and planned, does take a while. However, Wembley Stadium in England, from England, this is a 90,000 stadium. Of course, I'm proud of my British stadiums. 90,000 stadium. This overtook a symbolic landmark. The two towers and the actual original Wembley Stadium. This was like the heart, and this is where England won its only World Cup. But yeah, did we have any issues with getting rid of this? No.
It's a different country.
Yes, and it's happened in other countries. Look at the Stade de France. That took a symbolic things from the French Revolution. The Munich Stadium, which took over some parts of of their history. I mean, it's for the development of the future, we need this. Now, Wembley, the actual stadium, took a while to build. There's no denying that, because a good company called Multiplex, which funny enough is an Australian decided to blow things out. But here we go. Okay. Within 5 years, an architect can come up with a sufficient stadium, and it doesn't take time. It takes time, but it doesn't take that much time. The architects are there to make their jobs, and this can be built, and it's commencement built, and it can be built if everything goes our way within this 5 years. And so we think that the increase into the 10 years is just actually going to increase costs, actually going to blow out costs, going to be spent on irrelevant things such as, are we going to paint it blue or purple or royal blue or light blue or magnolia and deep beige? And these things are going to actually, the more time it takes for stuff like this, the actual more cost it's going to be. So it's actually contradicting their original argument that it's going to be a cost blowout.
Yeah. The Honourable Gemma Lee.
The Honourable Gemma Lee. All well and good that you're proposing that we have it done in time for the, is it FIFA? FIFA World Cup. What happens afterwards? I mean, when we have a Dockers game or an Eagles game at the Subiaco Oval, we get about, 38,000? Sometimes you'll get capacity. So we're going to have a half-filled stadium that's only going to ever be used if we get the FIFA World Cup. If you just watch the football, it will say the capacity on it, if you ever actually watch the football.
They don't. They go because the teams are crap.
No.
Order members, there's some things you should even keep out of the Chamber of Parliament. Religion and football teams are probably two of them.
I think I mentioned both of those today, Mr.
Yeah. For some it is the same thing. The Honourable Tammy Ann Caldwell.
Mr. Chairperson, regional and lots of metro hospitals and roads and schools are crying out for money to be injected into them. And they have been for at least 10 years, but sometimes in the cases of Albany Hospital, schools and roads, and up at Moora and many up north, they have been calling out for money for much longer than a decade, probably 20 or 30 years. But the unhonourable opposition would rather inject and waste millions of dollars onto a sports stadium that they think can be up and running, in 5 years. But that's the way society seems to be going downhill. We value sport over health.
The Honourable Lauren Goodhart.
The clause to be changed is that it needs to, as it says, that the state government begins development within 5 or 10 years, whatever it may be, not to have it complete within 5 years. That's a little bit of a stretch. We should give the public something that they want, not something that they necessarily need.
The Honourable Ian Garlett.
Ian Garlett. We need this stadium as soon as possible, and 2018, which is the earliest bid for the World Cup we are looking to seek, is 10 years away. For Australia to host either World Cup, 2018 or 2022, we must begin as soon as possible. We, the opposition, have gone back and forth stating the benefits that will come out of this, come out of the production of this stadium. But to boost the economy even further in terms of tourism, etc., this stadium needs to be built as soon as possible.
Hear, hear. The Honourable Gemma Lee.
Opposition have just stated that in 10 years we could be getting the FIFA World Cup. There is no actual thing saying that we're going to get it. Yeah, but we're in...
It doesn't guarantee it.
It doesn't guarantee that we are going to get it. The money is better spent on other things than it is on a stadium that is based on the idea that we may get the FIFA World Cup.
Isn't just for the FIFA World
It's
Cup.
just not for the World Cup.
The Honourable Vlada Lemek.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. The Honourable Vlad Lemek. The point isn't, by building this stadium, we send out a clear message to the organisation, the FIFA organisation, that we are ready to commit to a World Cup. This is one of the reasons, this is the rationale this is a rationale for saying that we need the stadium to begin development in the 5 years. Just because we might not get it doesn't mean that it's, even if we don't get, Mr. Chairperson, even if we don't host FIFA, does this mean that the stadium is just going to go decrepit and no one's ever going to use it? I don't think so. There are so many options that we get with it. We can use this stadium for so many things. It's multi-purpose for a reason. It'll be there. It'll be when we need it, and for whatever reason, lengthening the development phase to 10 years will just encourage complacency, and things will not get done.
The Honourable Lewis Richards.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. The Honourable Lewis Richards. Just like to reiterate the Shadow Minister for Police Justice Corrective Services. It will apply complacency. That's one of the reasons why Wembley was such a cost blowout, because there wasn't any deadlines. There wasn't any. It was just, let's build a stadium and then let's see how it goes. We have a deadline. They'll be forced to work on this deadline. It goes like, everyone knows that when you work to the deadline, you work harder. If you don't have a deadline, you just be complacent. You sit there and go, oh, we've got all day to build this, we just leave it, and then, oh dear, we've fallen into the thing. It's not a rush job when it's an efficient job. It will be an efficient job. And I just like to state one fact that, about this cost blowout. I mean, recently, as I'm sure Mr. Chairperson will understand, the National Party bribed himself into a government with the Liberals by asking royalties for regions. Now, royalties for regions is $250 million per year minimum. It's like 25%. A stadium is $500 million, and that's a one-off. It's going to be a maximum. So, in fact, by the time that we can get this over 5 years, there'll be $1.2 billion, which is done for the royalty for regions. And now, they're saying that royalty, as stated, I've seen the state of regional hospitals. How about we spend it out? Oh no, of course, the way Mr. Grills and the National Party have decided that they've distributed. They haven't chosen what needs priority sorting for this money. I mean, they've given, I think it's about $120,000 to a shire which has 2 roads and 2 farms in it. They've actually stated on the news that they've gone, what can we do with this money? We would rather put this in health, in hospitals, in homes and emergency accommodation. But no, they have to spend it or it goes back or they don't get it. So how about we just look at it and go, let's look about it logically. It goes, royalties for regions, which is the Nationals, bidding to get government in. This can be used for these issues such as health. So let's get back to the point of this bill. Yes, 250 million per year. Yes. Yes, one stadium. Look at the long-term economic effects, Mr. Chairperson.
Order. If the member addresses his comments to the chair, and then I'll make sure I give all of the other members that want to have a say an opportunity to respond in due course.
Economic statistics show, Mr. Chairperson, that in Australia, the marginal propensity to consume, which is the amount of money spent per dollar in Australia, is about 0.75 to 0.8. That means we save every 20 cents of a dollar. That means the multiplier effect is between 5 or 4 times the original investment. So they're saying, yeah, this costs, I can understand why they've got an issue with the cost. I mean, it is a lot of money. But this has a potential, WA economic, potential for the WA economy to have a minimum of $2 billion of into economy. Then this future, and we're not saying that this bill, Mr. Chairperson, the money we profit from the original cost when we get into the black, Mr. Chairperson. So we're not just going to keep it to sport. We're not going to give it to the clubs. We're not going to go, okay, because you've got a new stadium, we're going to give you the money profit. This can we have taxes. We don't tax GST like the federal state or stamp duty just for that series. All the stamp duty will go to homes. It goes to the whole of the WA, Western Australia. So this bill, when it gets to the profit and when we get the massive money which is going to come back, at least 1.5 billion over the long term back, this can be used for the houses. This can be used for the hospitals. This can be used for the roads. So this is a good economic bill investment it could be a good investment by the WA government to give way up all this money in the future.
The Leader of the House, the Honourable Dylan Capehorn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson, the Honourable Dylan Capehorn. I'm quite intrigued and astounded, in fact, by the Shadow Minister for Police, Justice and Corrective Services, who made the comment that Australia, if Perth gets this brand new stadium, Australia is guaranteed the FIFA World Cup in either 2018 or 2022. However, there is still the fact that Adelaide still have insufficient stadiums, and they have no plan like this to do it. So why, therefore, should we resort to doing it when it's highly likely that we will not get it anyway?
The Honourable Luke Ellery.
Chair, I just have to question, I understand the importance that the opposition holds on this stadium, but in terms of the amendment, we are only arguing about why do they desire to build, or actually, as it states in here, commences in 5 years and not 10. I mean, this has been dragging on. My own mother has gotten up and left because it's boring. Thought I'd point that out. Please, can we address the question, why must it be 5 and not 10 years?
I'll take that as a point of order on relevancy for the debate and remind people that we probably have strayed a little bit from where the relevant points of the debate, and encourage members to bring their comments back to the key question that we're dealing with. But the Honourable Georgia O'Keefe, sorry. I'm getting names wrong everywhere today, aren't I?
The Honourable Georgia O'Keefe. Just to clarify for the Honourable Luke Ellery, the reason we wish to commence development of this stadium within the next 5 years is because stadiums do take a long time to be built. And if we commence in 2019, that's 3 years until the 2022. But yeah, it only gives us 3 years to make the stadium just in time for the 2022 FIFA World Cup.
The Honourable Sophie Burke.
Honourable Sophie Burke. The member for the opposition's saying, well, all the opposition saying that it needs to be done in 5 years, not 10. Well, this seems a bit ridiculous to me because in my own context, in my local shopping centre, the Claremont Quarter, it was put up in a couple of months and it just looks pretty horrible. It's supposed to be modern, doesn't look good. If we're putting this up so quickly, we're not even taking into account the colours you say, it's supposed to be an Australian icon, and if you want economic benefits and we want to advertise it to people around the world to come over and we don't really have much in Perth. If this is going to be the one icon in Perth that people are going to come look at, if we're not going to actually put time in it, what's the point?
We don't want to build it in 5 years. We want to start it in 5 years.
I'm just going to sit down.
All right. The Leader of the Government, the Honourable Dylan Capehorn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson, the Honourable Dylan Capehorn. I'd just like to state that this amendment does not mean that on the 7th of July 2019 the government will go ahead and start building the stadium. It allows for a longer period of consideration, not just 5 but 10 years. We can begin it in 2012, 2013, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 or 19, Mr Chairperson.
The Honourable Luke Ellery.
It appears that from the question that this 5-year figure is only taking into consideration the FIFA. So is the opposition only building this stadium within this time period? Are they only taking 5 years just for the sake of one World Cup? Or are they actually considering the long-term benefits of this stadium?
The Honourable Tammy Ann Caldwell.
Thank you, Mr Chairperson. The Honourable Tammy Ann Caldwell. So, the Honourable Opposition is saying that this stadium will make $2 billion profit for the profit will bring in tourism, games, etc. Do you have any idea how many hundreds of billions of dollars are made from mining and agriculture? I know you mostly come from Perth, but there is a whole other state out there which is where the Parliament here gets all its money from. But most of the money this Parliament gets to spend on things comes from regional areas. And these areas are the ones that need better schools, better hospitals and better roads. If it weren't for these regional areas, you wouldn't have the $400 million that you are proposing to spend on a sports stadium in Perth. We are not saying that you can't make a sports stadium. This is a sports bill, I understand that. The point is you didn't have to make one that spends so many $1 million on it and detracts from spending it on all these other more important areas.
Point of order.
You stipulated earlier that we're trying to keep the amendments and she's not change.
I'm finished. You brought it up.
Members, I do remind members of the issue of relevance that the Honourable Luke Ellery reminded us all of, so do encourage people to keep their comments to the issue, and the issue we're dealing here is with the timing. So,
Mr Chairperson, I move that we vote on the clause.
Oh, I was going to say, I'm happy to. The question is the motion be put, which is something that we normally don't do in the upper house, but always you see something new when you come into this place. So I'll put the question that the question be put. Those of that opinion say aye. Against, no. I think the ayes have it. Members, we're dealing with clause 5, time frame, and the words to be deleted are that the state adopt a new major multi-purpose stadium within 5 years, and to be replaced with the state government begin development on a new multi-purpose stadium within 10 years. And I intend to move that the words be deleted. Obviously, if that motion is defeated, then the substantive motion will remain. So the question is that the words to be, and then obviously I'll then move to the words to be inserted. So if you want to insert the words, you need to support the deletion of the existing words. So the question is that words to be deleted. Those of that opinion say aye. Aye. Against, no. No. I think the noes have it.
I think the ayes have it.
Division called. Do we ring the bells? Yeah. Everyone's here? Oh, we don't worry about that going through. All right. So, lock the doors. Members, the question is that the words to be deleted be deleted. Those of that opinion should move to the right of the chair. Those against should move to the left of the chair. Do we have a teller? You want me to appoint them? We normally do. We appoint the... all right. Oh, do I get to have the final vote? Oh, good. All right. Should move to the right of the chair, and those voting with a nose will move to the left of the chair. So, do you want me to cast a vote as the chair if it's a tie?
Go on.
See, the problem I have is I would have moved a different amendment to both of you about this issue. So I would have actually moved it that if we are successful in the World Cup bid, we should immediately commence the construction of the new stadium, because the issue is that we won't actually be able to be a part of the FIFA World Cup bid if we don't have a stadium, and the stadiums that we currently have aren't acceptable. So that's how I would have voted on it. But I'll declare it a draw.
Doesn't carry.
In terms of
So that means that the words, the words stand. The motion is lost. So the words stay as is in the bill. So, members, if you want to resume your seats.
Which one was lost, just for everyone?
Clause 5.
Okay, cool. Can you just run next to them? Which one's passed? Which one?
So the question now is that the clause stand as printed. Those of that opinion say aye. Aye. Against no. I think the ayes have it. Members, we now know, does any member wish to speak to any clause before clause 14? Members, the question then is that the clauses 6 to 14 be agreed to. Those are that 6 to 13. Sorry, yes, you're right. The question is that clauses 6 to 13 be agreed to. Those of that opinion say aye. Against no. I think the ayes have it. Members, we now move to clause 14, and the question is that clause 14 stand as printed. The Honourable Dylan Caporn.
The Honourable Dylan Caporn. I move that we delete the words. It's here somewhere. That we delete the words. Mumbling. One further option to be investigated, and Subiaco Oval assisted by the WAFC proposal. So that the clause would then read. I apologise. That the state government accept the following sites for a major oval stadium as those that should be examined in more detail in the next stage of the study, including conception, design, detailed site analysis and business planning. A. East Perth, North Claysbrook. B. Subiaco, Kitchener, Muller Park.
Does any member wish to speak to the amendment? The Honourable Lewis Richards.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. The Honourable Lewis Richards. Although personally myself, I'm not a big fan of Subiaco Oval, which probably may have stated for my speeches. I've actually fell asleep in both times I've been at Subiaco Oval to watch AFL. But
is that the stadium or the game?
That was the stadium because it was too far away. I couldn't get into the action, Mr. Chairperson. But Subiaco Oval is a valid option for a redevelopment. So if after the concept design, detailed site analysis and business plan, East Perth and Subiaco are not available for a stadium, then we should still be able to look at Subiaco Oval and the redevelopment of that as a possible option. We're not saying that it's going to be Subiaco Oval, we're just saying that as a possible option, we still have it there, because even though if we have it at the same place, it might keep the government's argument of symbolicism. They might think, oh, it's at the same place, so it'll still be the same, it's still the old place. So we have no objection. We object to the amendments which the Honourable Dylan Caporn set forward, as Subiaco Oval can still be a valid and optional and a valid option for this bill.
Honourable Dylan Caporn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. The Honourable Dylan Caporn. Now, the reasoning we have deleted this from the clause is two reasons mainly. The first, it's a symbolic item. I mean, it's the home of the Waffle, the West Coast Eagles, and shamefully the Fremantle Dockers. However, instead of demolishing it, why doesn't the opposition propose that they just redevelop to meet the 60,000 seats? As I quote from the report, that it says it only will cost $235 million, which is considerably less than the multi-purpose stadium.
That's not what the Langley report says. The Honourable Lewis Richards.
This bill, thank you, Mr. Chairperson, the Honourable Lewis Richards. There is no, even though at one of the clauses in the specific bill, I can't remember the exact one, says about we have to recognise that the status quo of Members Equity Stadium, WACA and Subiaco Oval cannot, thank you very much, Minister. We're not saying that Subiaco Oval has to be demolished. We're just saying if there is a better alternative stating the bill to creating the stadium at another place, then we may destroy it. There is I believe there's no place in the actual bill saying that Subiaco Oval has to be demolished. If people want to use it as the home of waffle and have their waffle final there, I'm sure that if it's can be found logical and work it's always there. It can be there. It can keep going there if it's efficient and productive enough to have one game a year at that place. And of course, smaller bands could go there. So we're not actually saying that Subiaco will be demolished if these other two go ahead. We're just saying that there has to be a new stadium to reject the status quo that Members Equity Stadium, Subiaco and WACA already have. So we're saying that the development of the new Subiaco Oval, if it's far more better, Mr. Chairperson, than the other two options, which the stadium report, which was put forward by the former President Jeff Gallop, says if that's the best idea, then the government and I'm sure the planners will fully understand that it could be a better option. And if it is a better option, then sorry, Subiaco Oval, down the stairs.
The Honourable Luke Ellery.
The fact is, by including Subiaco in the clause, there is a possibility that the stadium could be built there. And if the planners do decide on building the stadium there, then it is undeniable that Subiaco would have to be removed. You cannot build a new stadium on top of Subiaco. That doesn't work. So, we requested that this be removed from the clause to remove any doubt from any football fans who honour the heritage of football, who honour the symbolism that Subiaco places and holds among football circles. We only request that it be removed to remove any doubt of any possibility that Subiaco be demolished.
The Honourable Dylan Capehorn.
I'd like to, thank you, Mr. Chairperson, the Honourable Dylan Capehorn. I'd like to point out once again to the opposition, wouldn't it be cheaper simply, and I have the report to show that it is cheaper, Mr. Chairperson, that it'd be cheaper simply to redevelop Subiaco Oval than it would be to build. Show us the facts. Well, how about Mr. Shadow Minister, the Perth Major Sporting Stadium, the one the Deputy Leader has in the hand, Mr. Chairperson. Therefore, it would be cheaper, and considerably cheaper, Mr. Chairperson. In fact, if my math is correct, approximately $255 million cheaper to redevelop Subiaco Oval than to demolish it and build another stadium on top of it. Isn't that the logical thing to do, Mr. Opposition Leader?
The Honourable Lewis Richards.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson, the Honourable Lewis Richards. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the education of Dylan, the Minister over there, for being able to do mental arithmetic. It shows that this education system does have a bit of credibility.
Benefits of a private school.
Hear, hear. That is a fair enough argument about the redevelopment. It is cheaper, but from my understanding, if you're going to remove that option, then that option of redeveloping goes out the window. It goes down the drain. So, how about if you kept it in there? Then, they might look and go, "Oh, actually, redeveloping it might be cheaper. That 200 million may go to another option." Because sometimes, no, I didn't personally I don't have no bias in this bill, but Subiaco Oval and sometimes you have to spend a bit more to get a better benefit. It's a thing called marginal rates. Goes like extra dollar spend, you get extra more out. Goes if they find that spending nearly double the amount, or I think just over double the amount. I don't know. My mental arithmetic. I'm gonna have to ask you that question. Is just under double amount? Thank you very much. If they say that it's better and the marginal rate is actually better for future long-term costs, then that's fair enough. But if it has to be redeveloped, and these people who are going to decide are not going to be the local Joe down at the pub or the local hoon driver. It's going to be people who know how to build stadiums. It's going to be people who know what factors have to go into it. It's going to be by legislators. It's going to be by builders. It's going to be by businesses. So, if they decide that Subiaco Oval is the better option, then by all means they'll choose Subiaco Oval to redevelopment it. So actually this amendment they've said is going to just delete that option, which is kind of contradictory once more of the government's opinion on this bill.
Members, we're dealing with clause 14, to which the Honourable Dylan Capehorn has moved to delete the phrase "one further option to be investigated, Subiaco Oval, assisted by the WAFC proposal." And the question is that the words "to be deleted" be deleted. Those of that opinion say aye. Aye. Against, no.
No. No.
I think the noes have it.
Do it if you want, mate. We've got all the time in the world.
Division call, ring the bells. Now we've got everyone in here. Lock the doors. Members, we're dealing with clause 14, and the question is that the words "one further action to be investigated, Subiaco Oval, assisted by the WAFC proposal" be deleted. Those voting with the ayes shall move to the right of the chair. Those voting with the noes will move to the left of the chair. Now, see, what I'm happy to do on this one is and say, before the tellers tell, I cast my vote with the ayes, you see. I would have voted for this one, so I was hoping it was going to be a tie.
You cast your vote now and still be defeated.
All right, order members. Order. It's been a long time since the Leader of the House was thrown out, so let's not start today. Can I say, speaking over the chair is one thing that will get you expelled from the House, kicked out. Members, I declare the motion, the amendment lost, so those words will remain. And just for the benefit of members, the reason I was supporting it is because actually the redevelopment of Subiaco Oval, which this motion deletes, is the most expensive option. It's been one of the great fallacies of the debate about the stadium, is that redeveloping Subiaco is a cheaper option. It actually isn't, because when you actually go through and study what's in the Langelot report, it makes it very clear to you that the cost of the redevelopment is about $500 or $600 million, but it doesn't include the cost of, if you want to do a complete redevelopment of Subiaco to the same standards, it doesn't include retractable seating, it doesn't include the resumption of land, of which the money that's included for the complete redevelopment does. So you've actually got to read the figures in quite a degree of detail to actually understand it. So I'm actually not supportive of a redevelopment. It's a very expensive option that gives you a poorer outcome. So anyway, there you go. And can I say, I am so glad to see a government finally understanding this point. All right, members. So the question now is that clause 14 stand as printed. Those of that opinion say aye. Aye. Against, no. I think the ayes have it. The question now is that clause 15 be agreed to. The Honourable Dylan Capehorn.
Again, Mr. Chairperson, the Honourable Dylan Capehorn. Thank you. I would like to insert, after going to the game, the phrase "after clause 5 has been commenced." Therefore, the clause would then read, 15, Sports Entertainment Hub, that the state government encourage development of the precincts around stadia to provide a sports entertainment hub that offers a mixture of residential, commercial, retail, cultural and dining opportunities to enhance the experience of going to the game after clause 5 has been commenced.
The Honourable Lewis Richards.
And that means it'll be commenced in 5 years now. We have no qualms about this amendment.
Members, the question is the words to be inserted. Those of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Against, no. I think the ayes have it. Members, the question now is that clause 16 stand as printed. Those of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Against, no. I think the ayes have it. Members, we now have to deal with proposed clause 14. Proposed clause 4. And the question is that proposed clause 4 stand as printed. Does the member still wish to move his amendment to clause 4?
No, we will remove it.
So the question now is that clause 4 stand as printed. Those of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Against, no. I think the ayes have it. The question now is that this shall be the title of the bill. Those of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Against, no. I think the ayes have it. The Leader of the House, do you want to move that I report the bill to the House?
I will find it. I apologise. I
just move that the bill...
I just move that the
We
bill...
report the bill to the
I
House.
report the bill to the House.
Members, the question is that I report the bill to the House. Those of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Against, no. I think the ayes have it. Normally at this stage, as the chairman, I would actually report the bill to the House. So I'll go through it, Mr. President. The Committee of the Whole has considered the Perth Major Stadium Stadia Amendment Bill and agreed to same without amendment. Oh no, actually no, with amendment. So the question is, the Leader of the House, do you want to move that the report be adopted? Oh, that's how we normally do it. I should probably follow your standing order.
Mr. President, I move that the report be adopted.
Members, the question is that the report be adopted. Those of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Against, no. I think the ayes have it. The question now is that the Leader of the House... no, who moved it? The Honourable Ian Garlett moved that the bill be read a third time. Did you...
Mr. President, the Honourable Ian Garlett, I move that the bill will now be read a third time.
Members, the question is the bill be read a third time. Did the Honourable Ian Garlett want to say anything on the third reading? Yeah, no, you can speak on the third reading. Although I should say to members that the third reading is normally a very limited debate, that you can only talk about why the bill should or shouldn't be passed as a result of the way it's come out of the committee stage. You can't rehash all of the policy debates, but you are entitled to that. Yeah. And most members will extend that to the fullest degree if they want to during the debate. But if you did want to say something about the bill as to why we should pass the bill, you're more than welcome to say something on Ian Garlett. You're right. Okay, members, the question is the bill be read a third time. Those of that opinion say aye. Against, no. Sorry.
This is for the third reading.
All right, I'll put the question again because there's obviously some confusion in the House. The question is the bill be read a third time. Those of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Against, no. I think the ayes have it. The Clerk, did you want to do the third reading?
Bill for an act to... I've lost the sheet.
That was the third reading.
You guys are voting it.
You're voting for it.
It's your bill. You guys want it to pass, right?
Yeah, but you still got to yell.
So if you want... Let's call the vote again.
Look, if there's confusion in the House about the vote, I'll take the question again. That we're dealing with a third reading, and the question is the bill be read a third time. Those of that opinion say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. Division called, ring the bells.
Is everyone here?
Yeah.
Everyone's here.
Yeah.
What's he doing? You can't abstain now.
Members, I think if everyone's in the chamber, I might.
No.
Those that want to abstain can leave, and those voting that support the bill will need to move to the right of the chair. Those against will need to move to the left of the chair. Order, members. There should be silence during a division and not coaxing of members across the chamber.
What is that?
Now, has everyone worked out what they're doing? That's right. Okay. Well, I think if we've got it, because everyone's here, shall we lock the doors? Okay. We're dealing with the third reading of the Perth Major Sporting Stadia Bill 2009, and the question is the bill be read a third time. Those voting with the ayes shall move to the right of the chair. Those voting with the noes shall move to the left of the chair. I don't get to appoint tellers, do I? We just All right. All right, so I guess the clerks can just tally it up for us. And what have we got there?
6 noes.
Yeah. Members, the result of the division is 8 ayes, 6 noes. I'll declare the bill carried. Members can resume their seats.
I got that. Two people abstained. They didn't even talk on the vote.
Really?
Didn't talk it.
What's the date again?
7th.
I think we now finishes for the afternoon, does it? So.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So what we might do is have a question and answer session. I enjoyed that debate because I think, as you all know, I'm actually the shadow spokesperson for sport and recreation matters. So it was kind of interesting listening to the debate. Can I say to my colleagues in the opposition, I think you should have pointed out to them, you should have pointed out to the government when they kept talking about hospitals, the current government is more than happy to spend money building a port in Geraldton that the private sector was happy to build, and that's going to cost the total government around Australia $760 odd million to build a port that was... we're just having a general chat. Yeah, I know. I'm just making the point that they could have... What you could have said is that... it's all right. I'm going to... I was just going to make some general comments, Luke.
The House moved to the presentation of Power Rangers. It's a past thing, but whoever gets the Power Rangers
maybe I'll come to that. I was just going to make some comments and then we can have a bit of a chat about the bill and some of the other issues if you want to ask any questions. But I was just going to make the comment that... there are a number of areas in the bill that you could have picked out in the current budgets of the state where you could have picked out, and the argument about hospitals is a bit of a fallacy because you've got things like OPG where there's $760 million being spent on a project which the private sector was more than happy to build and hand back to the state for free, and isn't happening. You've got Roe Highway Stage 8, a $550 million project in the southern suburbs that'll go through a whole lot of wetlands of international significance and actually to do nothing. No, we're having a bit of a chat now. I was going to compliment the government that it was the most reasonable government I'd ever seen in this chamber since we lost office last year. I was a little bit sort of trying to work out if you were right. So there's the Roa Highway Stage 8. There's another $550 million that you could have used to build the stadium rather than the argument that you're taking it away from hospitals. But a good try. It's a standard argument that you've picked up well from the lines that have been run by the current government. But I think that the other key thing for me is that is about if we're going to be a part of the state, if we want to be a part of the FIFA World Cup bid, we actually have to have a stadium as part of that bid. And at the moment, we're arguing that we want to be a part of the bid, but we actually don't have the solution of what the stadium is. So that's why I would have supported an amendment that went along the lines of we should commit to building the stadium if we're successful in winning the World Cup bid, which would mean continuing to do the planning and development of it in anticipation of, so that we can be a part of the bid. Because by the end of this year, if we don't have a stadium to put forward to as part of the national bid, Western Australia will miss out on it. And there's a range of other potential international events that you can get out of a stadium, such as that. And I think the other one which we noticed particularly during the boom years in Western Australia is having assets like that, apart from the tourism benefits, and even it's interesting the number of people that come to Western Australia every week to watch the AFL games. That actually drives there's sort of about 3,000 to 4,000 people, which for the Perth tourism industry is actually quite beneficial, and in fact the West Australian tourism industry, because a lot of those people hook into a trip down south or a trip to some of the other regions of Western Australia. So it is actually an economic asset apart from just the sporting benefits of it, and there are a range of other international events that you could have if you had a decent proper multi-purpose stadium, which the redevelopment of Subiaco doesn't provide you. It's a bit of a poor option. But I also love the idea of the sports entertainment hub, because I actually think that's another way in which we can help pay for it, and it's one of the areas where I would be quite critical that we haven't done in terms of the current government's position of just deferring it and not trying to develop it, is looking at the options of how you can actually fund a stadium like this, and it doesn't have to be all government money. And can I say to you, those of you that said some of the sporting codes that are going to use it should put in some money, totally agree. I mean, and I think if we were still going on to plan it, that should be part of the debate, is, well, how much is the AFL and other people that want to use the stadium going to contribute to it? Because there should be a contribution from them, but there's also obviously a state role. So that was just my overall comments. Although the other one I was going to say is...
And have too much control about the use of it for other events as well?
Look, I guess if they're prepared to pay for the majority of it, then they have a right to have the control of it. If they're not going to pay for the majority of it, they shouldn't have the control of it. And that's certainly one of the great debates. If you get a redevelopment of Subiaco, it's another point about opposing a redevelopment of Subiaco, is that if you redevelop the existing Subiaco, it will be run by the WA Football Commission, and as much as they're a great organisation, and I have some good friends there, there is a problem there in terms of having it dominated by the WA Football Commission, the management and operation of it. Whoever pays the majority of the stadium is the people that should own and control it. So if the state puts the majority of that money in, the people should be controlled by an independent body. Same as the MCG, which has a separate trust that underlies that. So for those of you that think that the home of football in Western Australia is Subiaco Oval, I'm old enough to remember when there was still banks on the outside of it and tiered standing room around the Roberts roadside. So and a lot of old wooden stadiums down the Subiaco roadside or the railway side. So it's changed remarkably and dramatically over the last 50 years. In fact, I think you'll find when it had the highest attendance ever, which was something like 50,000 people back in the 1950s or 60s, it was a very different stadium and had lots of sort of grass banking around sort of whole sides of it. So I think you can change Subiaco without actually destroying the heritage, because that was long gone.
Would you support maybe in that sort of case that if the state put in 51%, then they would have the majority, and the rest of the sporting codes would contribute up the rest of the 49%?
Look, in terms of the exact figures, I think that's something that's got to be worked through. But I think it's one of the areas that hasn't been done, is how do you actually fund that stadium? So will the federal government make a contribution to it? Now they're clearly saying that they're keen to get the FIFA World Cup bid, so there's an opportunity there. It provides a great stimulus package as part of the total stimulus package at the moment. So there's opportunities there. If you go down the Langalot Task Force report, there's an opportunity to shift. You move the stadium sort of down onto Kitchener Park, where the existing stadium is, which is where your sports entertainment hub. I think you actually add value to that land that you could redevelop into a whole range of purposes that would actually, I think, help fund it. I mean, a public-private partnership, I'm not a big fan of public-private partnerships as general, but I think that this is one development that would actually lend itself to a public-private partnership. For instance, a hotel development going in to that area, and when I say a hotel, I'm talking about an accommodation hotel, not just a pub where you go drinking. In Subiaco, there's now a crying demand. The Quest Apartments have the highest occupancy rate of any hotel in any accommodation in Western Australia, because of all of the small businesses now that have opened up in fact, some of them quite large, sort of businesses that have moved out of the CBD that have people coming in all the time. And the facilities that are in the stadium could be used by that hotel for conferences and conventions during the week when sport tends not to be played there. So I think you could actually add value to that land, which would make a significant contribution back. There's a few comments, but how are you all enjoying it anyway?
Great.
Yeah? It's good to see the upper house getting used for a youth parliament, because of course we always remind ourselves that we were the first house and we only ever made one mistake, and that was to create the lower house. So.
That's where the rabble go.
Yeah, that's where the rabble go.
So no one's moved the bill to abolish the upper house whilst you're up here?
I think one of them would if he had the chance. Yes, I think yes.
I thought I had it just about on the Queensland model of abolition. I had the numbers just before all the former members retired on the 21st of May, but I couldn't get the lower house to agree to it. But you know, yeah. Are there any questions you had about the operations of the upper house, or any other issues, general issues?
Will you think about what I said when you go back to your real job? About how the money shouldn't be spent so much on sport but should be injected more into these other areas?
Look, I don't disagree that health, education and law and order are always going to be the priorities of a state government. But you do have to do other things, and that's why I guess I made the point that I think there are a range of projects in Western. It is about, if it was a choice between a hospital and the sporting stadium, I would agree with you, the hospital wins every time. If we're going to get into the political debate, I mean, basically, if you look at the regional health infrastructure around Western Australia, it has been being rebuilt. In the Kimberley, every health facility in the Kimberley was rebuilt during the term of the last Labor government. The funding is being provided for it. There is the planning and the development was occurring, and we committed to doing that as the current government did. One of the difficulties that Western Australia faced for the last 4 years during the boom was not the capacity to find the money to do the projects, it was actually the capacity to physically build projects. And so a lot of the things that were pushed back was just because there wasn't literally the labour and the materials to do that construction work. The difficulty that you had was if you tried to do more, all you did was push up the price, because the private sector and the mining companies that were doing major developments, many of which are still ongoing in the northwest of Western Australia, I mean, which is one of the reasons WA hasn't been hit to the same degree as some of the other states, is places like the Pluto development, which is a major gas processing on the Burrup Peninsula, which will drive the economy of Western Australia well into the future. That was taking the construction resources of the state, so we physically couldn't get the people into WA to do the construction. But where we could, they were occurring, and so there was a program to redevelop and rebuild. The money, for instance, for the Fiona Stanley Hospital, the money to rebuild that is already there and sitting in a bank account. I mean, there's a special purpose trust account that was set up, agreed to by the Parliament. It's, I think, 1.2 billion, and the expectation is by the time that hospital has completed its construction, it will be there'll be enough through interest in that account to fully fund the construction of the Fiona Stanley Hospital. I guess if we wanted to have a debate, we could have a debate about the Royal Perth Hospital and whether or not that's wise expenditure of the money, because again, going back to the Reid review, what that said was you needed a southern metropolitan tertiary hospital, a central one, and eventually one in the north as well. But to maintain 2 tertiary hospitals in the centre of the CBD, that is going to actually... absolutely. Because the argument is that you actually need... We've got too many tertiary beds in Western Australia and not enough secondary beds. Now, and in the Perth metropolitan area, those secondary beds will be at places like Midland, the new Midland campus, at Rockingham, currently at Joondalup, but eventually Joondalup would become a tertiary hospital when there's enough demand for a third tertiary hospital. Rockingham, and again, the Rockingham Hospital was built and upgraded to 300 beds, the Armidale Hospital, but also the other place where you have secondary beds is in your major regional centres, so your Bunbury, the new Busselton Hospital, the Kalgoorlie, the Geraldton Hospital, which has been redeveloped, the Port Hedland, Karratha, those major regional centres. So there is a need to get more secondary beds because they're a lot cheaper to operate secondary beds, and the majority of people that go to hospital actually don't need tertiary care, they only need secondary care. If you've broken your leg or whatever, you don't need the full gamut of heart surgeons and all of the benefits that you have sitting in a tertiary hospital, but you do have benefits. So I guess my argument would be those areas do need to be the priority, and when you can, so long as you've got the capacity to build them, they should be given the priority. But then are a range of projects that become secondary projects where you've got your discretionary expenditure, and then the question is, do you spend it on the stadium or on the government building Oakajee Port rather than the private sector building it and handing it back to the government? And that's where the choices about a stadia should be made. So in that sense, I agree with you completely. We shouldn't be putting a hospital on hold to build the stadium. I would never argue for that. But there is an argument about Roe Highway Stage 8 or the Oakajee, and that's where I think the debate should be held, is which of those is the better, which of them actually has a net benefit to the economy. Now, if the private sector's doing Oakajee, where's the benefit? There's no net benefit by the public sector doing it, but the sporting stadium does have economic benefits for the state. So I hope that answers your question. It's a fairly political statement, but that's certainly, you know, my views of the world, I guess. Any other questions? Or after that answer, you're not game enough to ask another question, are you? North Metropolitan. Yeah, that's why I knew about the reputation of members for the North Metropolitan and interjections in this place. Very poor. Any other questions?
It's kind of a random question, and I apologise, but I've never known the answer. Why is Labour over here spelled like American and not British?
Because and in fact, if you want to see a bit of the history of it, it was probably the most recent article I saw where it gave a reasonable analysis of it, although I wouldn't agree with everything in it. There was an article on the back page by Joe Popozinski, I think his name is, on the back pages of the Business News about 2 weeks ago, and it basically goes to at the time of the formation of the Labor Party. It was fairly heavily driven by a progressive movement coming out of the US, and so they adopted the US spelling of it at that stage. And there was a degree of sort of, I guess, even in those days, not necessarily republicanism, because in those days republicanism would have been considered treason, but a degree of support for a bit more of an independent approach within Australia. So, but mainly the main argument was it was driven by the this progressive movement as and it's probably in terms of a sort of a political ideology been sort of lost a bit in sort of more recent times, but it was that movement. And yeah, if you are interested in it, go and get the Business News from, I think, probably about a week or two ago.
Thank you.
It gives a pretty good explanation of it.
Cheers.
No more questions? Why and how? The first part's really easy. I was first elected at the election in 1996 and took up my seat in 1997. Which still kind of scares me, that it was so far long ago, and and how quickly that time has flown by. I guess the how is the simple answer is I got pre-selection, but I just saw, I'd been involved and working for other members of Parliament for some time before I got elected, and I just basically thought, it wasn't something, I wasn't one of those people that left high school saying I'm going to be a member of Parliament one day, but I just sort of naturally and progressed. I'd gone to uni and got involved at uni as a mature age student, and sort of got more and more involved, and ended up working for members of Parliament. I thought, I could do that as well as they could, so I put my hand up when I saw there was an opportunity for a seat coming up. Why? I guess it's that same issue. I mean, I think like a lot of people, I've always been someone that's been involved in whatever I've been in, whether it's sort of in a basketball club, I end up on the committees, or whatever activity I've taken, and you just had that view that you want to make a contribution to the community, and you want to try and be a part of making the place a better place, the state a better place. And I think, in fairness, it's often a debate that the public see parliamentarians as being here for self-serving reasons. My experience is on both sides of Parliament, the majority of members are here for because they actually feel that they can contribute to making the state a better place. Now, we will have a disagreement about the manner and the way in which you should do that, and that's where our ideology comes in, but the end result of we actually have aspirations of a better place to live for our fellow people. But, how we define that might be different, but that's the ultimate goal for all of us. So, I mean, there's a few people that are probably in here for, just ego and self-centred reasons, but they are probably
in the vast minority rather than the majority. And that goes for both. I mean, I would make that comment about both sides of Parliament. I could make a political comment and say there's a little bit more of the self-serving ones on that side, but even that's probably not really a fair and accurate statement. You can pick them on both sides.
Sorry, Ken, to cut you off. Guys, we're going to do a photo on the steps, so if everyone could just come downstairs and meet the rest of them on these steps of Parliament, we're going to shoot a photograph.
Right now?
All right. Well, thanks very much for your time. Hope you enjoy it, and good luck for the rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Business of the day.
Business of the day, order number 8 from the Legislative Council, standing under the name of the Honourable Vlada Lemake.
I move to introduce a bill, the Criminal Code Amendment Bill 2009, Assaults on Public Officers, and that it be read a first time.
The question is that the bill be read for a first time. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, no. I believe the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We move to the first reading of the bill. Business of the day, order number...
Sorry. I'm in a bit of a mess today.
Are we skipping the clerk?
Let's get the page. Get the page. Right. Here we go. Where is your long title? Oh, here we go. Easy. A bill for an act to commend the criminal code and related purposes. First reading.
Member for East Met.
Madam President, the Honourable Vlada Lemake, I move that the bill now be read a second time. Madam President, this bill is an amendment to the Criminal Code which, in its most basic sense, removes the legislation which prescribes mandatory sentencing to assaults committed against emergency services personnel. These include members of the West Australian Police Force, Fire and Emergency Services Authority and other organisations as outlined in the interpretation section of the bill. This bill amends the Criminal Code such that the mandatory sentencing terms are removed from the code and replaced with discretionary terms. Furthermore, in accordance with public sentiment, this amending bill includes public officers that were initially excluded from the existing legislation. This bill attempts to remove the wrong or to right the wrongs established by the previous legislation in the respect that it returns discretion to the judiciary in accordance with the doctrine of separation of powers. Madam President, we've chosen this bill because we believe that there are far more losers than winners when mandatory sentencing is present in the justice system. As a state, most people believe that the government is not tough enough on crime. Cases such as the Matthew Butcher case commonly pop up in our media. We, as a critical, rational people, must remember that these cases are reported in the media because they are atypical. The West Australian public believes that the judicial system is not tough enough on crime, but this is simply not the case. In a recent speech, Chief Justice Wayne Martin of the Supreme Court outlined that in the year ended 30 June 2008, that there were 97,777 criminal cases before the criminal courts of Western Australia. 96,686 cases resulted in the defendant being found guilty, most often by reason of their own plea. 1,091 defendants were acquitted. This accounts for only 1% of all cases. 75% of those 1,000 cases were acquitted by a magistrate or a judge, not a jury. Madam President, it is simply erroneous, irrational and downright reckless to suggest that our justice system does not work. Of course, there are unfortunate miscarriages of justice, such as the Matthew Butcher case, but this is not representative of the whole. In an attempt to make the government look tough on crime, it has introduced mandatory sentencing for assaults on police officers. The reality of the situation is that this is a band-aid solution and it does more harm than it does good. It does not take into account the circumstances of each particular case, and it always disproportionately targets certain groups within society. Madam President, mandatory sentencing is the vestige of a redneck state. It has a dark history of targeting Indigenous Australians, particularly the youths. As an example, Indigenous children comprised 80% of cases under mandatory sentencing laws before the Children's Court in WA between February 97 and 98. Mandatory sentencing does not provide the judiciary with discretion in considering each case before it. It also means that the individual circumstances of each case are disregarded because the magistrate or the judge presiding has no choice but to sentence the accused. Unless we want to become a police state, we should fight to preserve the jury system of which we are proud of. We believe that by removing mandatory sentencing, we move a significant step away from becoming that police state. We, as a society, move a significant step toward a just, less discriminate society.
The Honourable Tammy-Ann Caldwell.
Thank you, Madam President. The Honourable Tammy-Ann Caldwell. Yes, of course, police and emergency services personnel need to be protected and their safety upheld. Ambulance, visa and SES workers, hospital staff, firefighters, security workers, hospital or healthcare workers, Royal Flying Doctor Service staff and police. They protect us and uphold public health and safety. So we applaud the opposition for realising this. Mark it on the calendar because they don't often get it right. They obviously have got absolutely nothing else right with this ridiculously wimpy bill. A very good way to protect these people who save our lives and uphold our laws is to have a law in place that dissuades and discourages those bullheads who would contemplate assaulting them. This is what the original amendment bill did, and now this irresponsible opposition wants to throw all that away and have no law that will make people think twice before they bash a policeman or nurse. We stress that we are not removing the judicial system's discretion. It is still entirely up to the judge and the jury or the magistrate whether or not they find an alleged offender guilty or not. It is still up to them whether they're guilty or not. Remember that Parliament wrote the criminal code that the judges must now abide by. We make the laws here and then the judges follow them. This is exactly what the mandatory sentencing for assaults on emergency services personnel and police does. But see, I don't think the opposition really understands what the bill last year aimed to do. The whole issue was that people who assaulted police officers were getting off too easily and not punished enough, and this meant that there was no real discouragement to stop further assaults on police, no discouragements to protect our police and emergency services personnel. Because, although the criminal code says that people who do assault these public officers can get imprisonment for 3 to 14 years, this does not mean that judges have to sentence them at all for any length of time. So the public wanted it mandatory to sentence people to jail or detention if they assaulted police. So I'll break it down for you. The lower house passed the Criminal Code Amendment 2008 bill, which said that if a person under 18 seriously assaulted or caused grievous bodily harm to a police personnel, it would be mandatory to sentence them to 3 months in jail or detention, up to the judge, jail or detention. I will remind you now that the young idiot who jumped on the back of trains in Perth late last year and graffitied on the windows said, oh, they only send me to detention centres. Detention centres are like playgrounds. So if you're worried, it's a shame that they're like playgrounds, yes. So if you're worried that sending a person under 18 to detention for 3 months is too tough, think again. If the offender was over 18, I wouldn't bash a policeman. If the offender was over 18, it would be mandatory to sentence them to jail for 6, 9 or 12 months, depending on the exact charge, seriousness and circumstances of the crime. In all cases, the judges could not suspend the sentence, meaning that the offenders would actually get real punishment, if you can call apathetic jails real punishment, not just a slap on the wrist. And in all cases, a conviction must be recorded against the offender's name. This, I will remind you, is what really passed in the other House. This opposition here has basically said, no, let's get back to the way it was before, when everyone was unhappy with the lack of punishments for cop bashers and nurse attackers. Let's not punish people for attacking the people who uphold our laws and save our lives. Let's not make it mandatory to see some justice done. Let's not provide any discouragement to potential police attackers by making would-be offenders fearful of definitely going to jail for 3 to 12 months if they assaulted them. Let's make it, like before, that the judges can decide what, if any, punishment is handed out. Maybe some counselling would be a bit nicer for the poor bloke who probably had a bad childhood or was under the influence of alcohol, who bashed a poor cop senseless or attacked a nurse in hospital. Let's make things a bit easier for the poor guy. We don't want to be too tough on him, really, do we? Well, yes, we do. And this is why we oppose the opposition's bill. It's gutless, weak, watered down, useless and pathetic. The opposition needs to get over this nandy-pandy social do-gooder attitude. They need to stop looking through their rose-coloured glasses and realise our police and emergency services personnel need to be protected for their sake and all ours. They need to realise that 3 to 12 months in jail or detention is not going to kill anyone. It's really not even that harsh with our luxury jails with internet access, LCD TVs and air conditioning. I wouldn't bash a cop. The opposition needs to remember that we are representatives of the people, and this is what the people want, as evidenced by talkback radio, letters to the editor and public protests. Yes.
The Honourable
we need
Tammy
to
and
protect
Corbell.
those who protect us.
Orders of the... so I call on the Honourable Vlada Lemack. No?
Each person can only speak once, so the question is the bill be read a second
The
time.
question is that the bill will be read for a first time. The Honourable Lewis Richards.
Thank you, Madam President. The Honourable Lewis Richards. Now, the main aim of the original Criminal Code Amendment Bill of 2008 was to protect police officers by creating a deterrent to assaulting them. However, mandatory sentencing is not really an effective way of achieving this. Higher sentences does not lead to less crime. And I refer to a lovely statistics which happens from the most toughest country in Western society on crime, the United States of America. America, where many of the states still have capital punishment, also has the highest percentage of population in prison, according to the King's Cross of London's 2007 report into it, Madam Speaker, that 1 in 32 Americans are held by the judicial system, and as of 2006, and 2,310,934 prisoners as of June 30, 2008. That is the population of Perth, of Western Australia, Madam Speaker. That's a lot of people. Although we, the opposition, applaud the introduction of specific laws for police officers, we feel that other emergency personnel should be included under the same bracket, Madam Speaker, as they go through similar dangers in their line of work. Although mandatory sentencing, it diminishes... we're against mandatory sentencing. Why? Because it diminishes the role of the judicial system. It removes the whole very, very much agreed, apart of the law, Madam President, that there's a thing called separation of powers, as the Shadow Minister for Police, Justice and Corrective Services said. The Senate's Legal and Constitutional References Committee report on an inquiry to the Human Rights Bill 2000 of mandatory sentencing found that mandatory sentencing will, in long term, be unfair on people from low socio-economic areas, Madam Speaker. This is unfair. We have a judicial system. Of course, some people will find that some sentences are unfair, because, as Madam President, I can agree, and most people agree, people have different opinions on how crime should be tackled. Just finish off, there's a quote from a equivalent law god from the 1700s, 1800s, of William Blackstone. He said, this is the man who started and was one of the major legal professors of all time. It's better to have rather 20 guilty people on the street rather than having one innocent person in jail. I like to think about that. This bill gives back the power the judicial system lost of what they originally wanted to do, and it does not do anything. And it gives them back, and this was their job. This is their job. This is why they're there. This is why they're giving it, and this is why this bill should go through.
The question is that the bill now be read a first time. All those in favour say aye.
Someone stand up, please, if you want to talk.
The Honourable Luke Ellery.
Oh, thank you, Madam President. The Honourable Luke Ellery. It seems to be sort of one of the flows of the opposition's arguments that by abolishing mandatory sentencing, you are therefore returning the power to the judge. However, there are two main issues that the government has with this. One, we promise and have still left it to the judge's discretion on whether the defendant is found guilty. How is that a shame? We have left it to the judge whether the defendant is found guilty or innocent. No, please let me finish. There is no dispute with that. The second problem we have is that all we're doing is setting a minimum standard, a benchmark. The benchmark for assaulting a police officer is 3 months prison or detention. This sends a clear message to any member of Western Australia that if they assault the members of Australia who enforce the laws that we legislate, they will be jailed for at least 3 months. That is very mild. Now, this is a guarantee. 3 months. I will not assault a police officer. Do you know how long some police officers spend recovering? It is also important that the judge is left at their discretion 3 months and above for a serious and life-threatening assault on an officer. The judge may leave it to the discretion that the offender has 13 years, but we are leaving it to their discretion that they can sentence them to any length of imprisonment, provided it is at least 3 months. That is more than fair, and it sends a clear message.
The question is that the bill now be read a first time. The Honourable Lauren Goodhart.
Everyone, the government is saying that our honourable police force need to be protected. What about the public where the police are corrupt and do choose to provoke, that's the word, thank you, to provoke the public into whatever acts that they... There is no justice.
Members, I draw the honourable member's attention to parliamentary privilege and to be wary of the comments that you make regarding institutions of the government.
Okay, yeah. There have been cases in Western Australia where police have corrupt or wrongfully provoked someone, and this also needs to be taken into consideration.
The Honourable Georgia O'Keefe.
Madam President, the Honourable Georgia O'Keefe. the Honourable Luke Ellery is trying to suggest is ludicrous. There is no judicial discretion. Saying that the judge gets to decide whether a person is innocent or guilty is not judicial discretion. Judicial discretion is taking into account the circumstances. For example, in the case of what the Honourable Lauren Goodhart was talking about, if a person may be guilty of bashing a police officer, but circumstances need to be taken into account if it was provoked. Provoked isn't necessarily self-defence.
The Honourable Ian Garlett.
Madam President, the Honourable Ian Garlett, I'd just like to say that in this fair country of ours, all citizens have the right to a fair trial. Mandatory sentencing is against that and not fair. As circumstances is to be taken into account. Judges need to make decisions based on the merits of the case. This does not discriminate and lets judges decide cases based on the facts and let them effectively do their job within our legal system. And this will be much more cost effective than long sentences, and it is a proven fact that public now prefers judicial discretion than mandatory sentencing. And often mandatory sentencing acts to the detriment of minorities, as public officers and minorities often cannot communicate in the same way as
The Honourable Joshua Rainier Blenort.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Honourable Josh Blenort. Firstly, I really doubt we can call our police officers corrupt. But recruitment numbers, a very small amount. Laws cannot be made to account for minorities as small as that. I don't mean that, I mean as in small numbers like that. Sorry. Firstly, our recruitment numbers for not only police officers but for lots of emergency service personnel are down. That's not good. Mandatory sentencing hasn't been introduced for the bashing of police officers. It's only passed in the lower house. It's only been passed in the lower house. It is not actual law yet. It is still in the upper house. With numbers down, this means that number of emergency service personnel that we need to uphold the laws that this very parliament makes are down, and that's obviously not a good thing. Not only is a police officer numbers down, but also emergency service personnel, such as ambulance drivers, firemen, all those great people who helped us during the very recent tragic bushfires. Those numbers cannot be down. The more there are, the more lives will be saved, and the greater the livelihood of those people who are saved, because more houses will be saved, things like that. Also, if the police officers and other services personnel know that the state is backing them, but they know this because if the state is willing to introduce mandatory sentencing to sentence those who go and cause grievous bodily harm to a police officer who uphold the laws of society, how are they supposed to feel that they are backed by society if we will not pass a law to defend those? If we rather defend those who attack a police officer than the actual police officers, what are they supposed to think? They want to do their job, and they can do their job much better if they think the state is backing them.
The Honourable Michael Bovell.
Thank you, Madam President. The Honourable Michael Bovell. Mandatory sentencing laws are highly reactive, and with increased jail time, greater effect and expense on the economy. There will be a much greater yield in terms of crime prevention if this money was invested in prevention policies in areas such as education. Mandatory sentencing is a crude policy based on crude assumptions about how crime is perpetrated and what the public want. Mandatory sentencing prevents crime through incapacitating and detaining repeat offenders and deterring potential offenders. This effect in prevention is impossible to assess. As the Honourable Member, the Leader of the Opposition, has pointed out, in the US, mandatory sentencing laws show no reduction in crime. The current mandatory sentencing laws are not aimed at the most dangerous of criminals. Poor and marginalised people are more likely to commit these sorts of offences, like the Honourable Member pointed out. The Northern Territory has had quite hard laws since 1997 for property matters. 14 days jail for the first offence, 90 days jail for the second offence, and 1 year for the third offence. An Aboriginal man was jailed for 1 year for the theft of a towel in 1999. A Californian man was jailed for 25 years in 1997 for stealing a slice of pizza. Citizens of Australia cannot be jailed in such a manner, and the court system needs to be amended to allow discretion on all matters at all times that are before it. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Stealing a pizza.
The question is that the bill now be read for a second time. The Honourable Sophie Burke.
Honourable Sophie Burke. Now we intend for the sentence to be mandatory, so people who intend to abuse the police and other emergency personnel will stop and think beforehand. This sentence acts as a deterrent for people who intend to abuse the officers who uphold the law, save lives and fight fires. These officers are already risking their lives with their jobs. They don't need further fear that the public are going to abuse them.
The question is that the bill now be read for a second time. The Honourable Gemma Lee.
I refer to section 2975A in this bill that states, I'll read the first bit as well. If the offence is committed by a young person as defined in the Young Offenders Act 1994, section 3, in the circumstances set out in subsection 4A or B against a public officer who is an emergency service personnel, then in accordance of that Act, in particular section 46.5A of it, the court sentencing the offender, A, must sentence the offender to a punishment as the court thinks fit by considering the circumstances of the event. This clause is too lenient and too broad, and it's going to lead to a lot of people slipping through the holes that are in this bill.
The question is that the bill now be read for a second time. The Honourable Rachel Moles.
Thank you, Madam President. The Honourable Rachel Moles. Emergency services personnel have the right to feel safe while they are doing their job. Emergency services personnel are responsible for upholding the law, protecting citizens and saving our lives. They deserve to be protected and they deserve to feel safe. This bill does not give emergency service personnel the protection from abuse that they need. Mandatory sentencing would give emergency service personnel the protection and feeling of safety they deserve.
The question is that the bill now be read for a second time. The Honourable Mitchell Goff.
Thank you, Madam President. The Honourable Mitchell Goff. Once again, we have a government that insists on taking the hard line to gauge popular opinion.
Order.
Mandatory sentencing is the way back. Judicial discretion is the way forward.
The question is that the bill now be read for a second time. The Honourable Amy Leathersage.
Thank you, Madam President. The Honourable Amy Leathersage. I'd like to congratulate the opposition on their inclusion of the SES, the ambulance, FISA, hospital staff, firefighter, RFDS, as well as the police, because they're as much a part of protecting our society as the other forces. So congratulations on getting at least half the bill right.
The question is that order, members. The question is that the bill now be read for a second time. The Honourable Kate Novelli.
Thank you, Madam President. The Honourable Kate Novelli. I stand before the Parliament today as the Justice Minister on behalf of public officers, and I support their protection. In a recent paper released by the Western Australian Police Union, President Mike Dean stated that we celebrate the introduction of this legislation. For too long have our members been insulted by the continual leniency of the judicial system. This is a system that lacks compassion and fairness for the victims of crime, and police and public officers in particular. Today, Madam President, we are acting on their concerns and we are acting to protect them. Now, the opposition today has argued that it is not the role of Parliament to introduce discretion into our courts. Well, I direct the opposition's attention to a quote by Justice Barwick, a respected High Court judge, who in the case of Pauling and Caulfield stated, "It is beyond question that the Parliament can prescribe such a penalty as it thinks fit, Madam President, for the amount that it credits. It may make the penalty absolute in the sense that there is but one penalty which the court is empowered to impose, and in my opinion it may be an unqualified duty on the court to impose that penalty. But whether or not such a discretion should be given to a court in relation to an offence, it is for the decision of Parliament. It is for the decision of Parliament, Madam President, and that is what we're introducing today. Mandatory sentencing is an effective tool, as was seen, an effective tool against crime rates, as was seen with the introduction of the 3 strikes legislation in WA, which has seen a decrease in reoffending of house burglaries. I stand before this Legislative Council today as the Justice Minister who supports the protection of our public officers.
The question is that the bill now be read for a second time. The Honourable Dylan Capone.
Thank you, Madam President. The Honourable Dylan Capehorn. Congratulations, guys. You've got something right for once. The first half of the bill. By including the members of the emergency service personnel that you have, once again, we congratulate you, and then we come down on you like a ton of bricks. Ladies and gentlemen, on the idea that you're standing up for the rights of people who assault public officers. Why should these people be afraid of being assaulted, abused, and beaten up when there is no proper laws to sentence these people? You're standing up for the human rights, the rights you should say, thank you, Madam President, the rights, I should say, of the offender. The offender loses his right to a right when he abuses a police officer. It's harsh, but it's true.
The question is that the bill now be read for a second time. All those of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, no. I believe the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
A bill for an act to amend the criminal code and related purposes, second reading.
Clauses 1 to 2.
That's around the corner there. Just over. Yep. So you just say that.
The committee will now consider the Criminal Code Amendment Bill 2009, brackets number 009-1, close brackets. Clause.
The question is at clause 1.
The question is that clauses 1 to 2 stand as printed. All those in favour say aye. To the contrary, no. I believe the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The question is that clause 3 stand as printed. All those...
I move to make an amendment to clause 3. I, the Honourable Kate Novelli, move to insert the words members of the Australian Defence Force after the words Royal Flying Doctor in Western Australian airspace and on ground, so that the clause would read, emergency services personnel means a person who is employed in the Western Australian Police Force, Fire and Emergency Services Authority of Western Australia, Western Australian Hospitals, St John Ambulance and Royal Flying Doctor in Western Australian airspace and on ground, and members of the Royal Australian Defence Force. Offence has the same meaning as in Section 2 of the Criminal Code. Public officer has the meaning given in Section 1 of the Criminal Code. Young person has the meaning given in Section 3 of the Young Offenders Act 1994.
The question is that the words to be inserted be inserted. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary. Yep, that's
You have to stand.
You've got to stand or else I move on. The Honourable Vlada Lemag.
Madam President, the Honourable Vlada Lemag, the issue here simply is that we do not have the jurisdiction to legislate for the Royal Australian Defence Force. It is a federal issue, not a state issue. We have no power.
Do you have a point of order, the Honourable Kate Novelli?
I wish to dispute something said by the Honourable Member.
Go ahead.
The jurisdiction under which a person is prosecuted is determined by the offender, not the person that they offend against. So whether or not a person offends against a member of the Australian Defence Force or a public officer is irrelevant when determining where they will be prosecuted. It is dependent upon the offender. So if the offender is a Western Australian citizen, they will be prosecuted under this code.
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Vlada Lemag.
Thank you, Madam President. The Honourable Vlada Lemag. In response to that, we basically have the federal government has its own legislation in terms of assaults against Defence Force members. There is no point for us, for the state parliament, to legislate in that area because in any case, Commonwealth law always trumps state law. If there is a law passed here, it will have no effect, it's irrelevant and it's redundant.
The question is that the words to be inserted be inserted. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no.
No.
I believe the ayes have it.
I believe the noes have it.
Don't you call for a division? You need to say divide.
Oh, okay.
Division called. Ring the bells. Who's the teller?
You require that all ayes move to the right of the chair and all noes to the left.
All of the ayes need to move to the right of the chair. All of the noes to the left of the chair. I appoint the Honourable Gemma Lee as teller for the ayes and the Honourable Lewis Richards, is that right, as teller for the noes?
Yep. Sorry, yeah, Dylan's a leader, my mistake.
Oh, sorry, Dylan, the Honourable Dylan Capehorn, who's teller for the noes, ayes?
90.
Shut the doors.
9 ayes.
Okay, the ayes, yep. We have 10 nays, 9 ayes. I believe the noes have it. The question is that clause 3 stand as printed. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. I believe the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The question is that clause 4 be stand as printed. Or the Honourable Kate Novelli.
Madam President, I make a move to amend clause 4. I move that to delete the words "as the court thinks fit by weighing up the circumstances of the event" and substitute "after the court has taken into consideration the effects of section 46(2) A to E of the Young Offenders Act," which I will read now to you. Principles and considerations to be applied to young offenders when dealing with a person who has been found guilty of an offence. The court, in disposing the matter, is to consider in particular the nature and the seriousness of the offence, any history of offences previously committed by the offender, the cultural background of the offender, any order previously made by a court when disposing a charge of the offence that still applies to the offender, and any further order that is liable to be imposed if the offender does not comply with the terms of such an order, the extent, if any, to which any person was affected as a victim of the offence. I move so that the clause should now read, if the offence is committed by a young person as defined in the Young Offenders Act 1994, Section 3, in the circumstances set out in subsection 4A or B against a public officer who is an emergency services personnel, then with accordance of that Act, and in particular Section 46, 5A of it, the court sentencing the offender, A, must sentence the offender to a punishment after the court has taken into consideration the effects of Section 46(2) A to E of the Young Offenders Act 1995. B, must not suspend any term of imprisonment imposed under paragraph A when issued, and C, must record a conviction against the offender.
The question is that the words to be deleted be deleted. The Honourable Vlad.
The issue here is that the government is trying to restrict what the judiciary can and cannot consider in terms of the incident at hand. Again, we have a doctrine of separation of powers that separates the legislature, the branch of the executive and the judiciary. When you start telling a judiciary what it can and cannot consider in a case, you start to blur that separation of powers. This is why we disagree with the amendment.
The Honourable Lewis Richards.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. The Honourable Lewis Richards. Legislation has been taken into case in certain arms of the law, Madam Chairperson. For example, the shirt test and torts determines how a breach of duty, how you decide if someone's got a breach of duty. Now, then they found out that some of the tests was too hard or it was too easy, Madam Chairperson. So there was a thing called the IP report, 2001, by Justice Ip of the New South Wales Court of Appeal. He came in and said, him and a bunch of, a select few of other legal issues and politicians and other dignified guests, Madam Chairperson, under the federal inquiry, stated that there has to be changed, and this has been legislated in WA. If you want to know, it's the Civil Liability Act, Section 5B, and other certain and in all other states. But the thing is about that changed one significant. Well, that changed the bar from not far-fetched, not fanciful, to a reasonable an act to an act which is not insignificant. There's a big difference. What this bill does. Just to finish to clear up all of that thing, Madam Chairperson. It gave more discretion. It actually raised the bar a bit higher. So it gave more discretion to go like, well, this is too low, but we have to do it. This actually gives them a better idea, Madam Chairperson. What this Youth Offenders Act 1995, Section 42(2) A to E, it actually restricts it. I mean, certain parts of circumstances, according to this, will not be set out, and they could be key issues between innocent and guilty. So we're going to send, because this amendment doesn't include it, we're going to send a person who would have been innocent if it was circumstance of the event to 3 months imprisonment, according to the original bill. That's just ludicrous. That is unfair. And that is totally against what the judicial system stands for.
The question is that the words to be deleted be deleted. All those in favour say aye. To the contrary, no. No. I believe the ayes have it.
Can I call them to
divide? Division called. Ring the bells.
This is deleted.
No point.
This is to pass the amendment.
Yes.
Okay.
I appoint the Honourable Dylan Capone as teller for the ayes, and I appoint the Honourable Lewis Richards as teller for the noes. The ayes move to the right of the chair, the noes to the left. Okay, we have ayes 10 nays, 9 for the ayes. The nays have it, the amendment is lost. The question is that clause 4 stand as printed. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. I believe the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The question is that clause 5 stand as printed. The Honourable Kate Novelli.
Madam President, I move to make an amendment to clause 5. I move to delete the words "the court thinks fit" by weighing up the circumstances on the event and substitute "after the court has taken into consideration the effects of section 46(2) A to E of the Young Offenders Act 1995 as I've already read, so that the clause would then read, "If a young person as defined in the Young Offenders Act 1994 section 3 is convicted of an offence against subsection 1D or E against a public officer who is an emergency services personnel and the emergency services personnel suffers bodily harm, then, with accordance of that Act, and in particular section 46(5)A of it, the court sentencing the offender, A, must consider the offender to a punishment after the court has taken into consideration the effects of section 46(2) A to E of the Young Offenders Act 1995, B, must not suspend any term of imprisonment imposed under paragraph A when issued, and C, must record a conviction against the person."
The Honourable Vlada Lamag.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. The Honourable Vlada Lamag. As mentioned before, this amendment attempts to restrict what the judiciary can and cannot consider. Furthermore, the Honourable Government seems to think that that we should just have heavy-handed tactics in all forms of legislation. One of the things that we are trying to do here is to give return the rights to the accused, not the convicted, not the criminal, yet the accused. The reason that there is such leniency, towards the accused is because of the immense power that the state has in prosecuting that accused. This is why we have to protect their rights, and it is heavily weighed within the accused's favour, but that is for a reason, and that is one of the values that we hold dear to this society.
The Honourable Luke Ellery.
The Honourable Luke Ellery. We realise that it is important for the judge to be able to have their discretion in regards to the law, but it is important not to forget the role of the judicial system, and that is to interpret the laws created by Parliament. Now, because this Young Offenders Act is already a law of the past, it is important at any rate that they take this law and act into consideration when they interpret at their own discretion the verdict of the case. It is a judicial system cannot ignore any law that applies to the case. And this amendment merely recognises that in circumstances this Act is relevant to the case of an assault on any public services officer.
The Honourable Lewis Richards.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. The Honourable Lewis Richards. Let's go back to one of my speeches in the last amendment. The IT report, which was put in to change that tort to law in breach of duty. This was because there was a cry out in the judicial system that people were able to be able to sue people and successfully sue people. So people were in injection.
The Honourable Dylan Kapoor.
We're talking about the criminal code, not the law.
Yes, sorry.
Please get to the point.
Yes,
the Honourable Lewis Richards, I do request that you stick to the matter at hand.
Yeah, thank you. There's a cry out in the whole judicial system. Now, but the thing is that there hasn't been a huge substantial cry out in the judicial system that we need to change how we look at the circumstances of the event, of the accused. There hasn't been but we should stop taking out a certain event. Now, I can understand why the governments on the opposite side have decided to put in this Offenders Act. Seems rational that if there's an Offenders Act which is prepared about the youth, then maybe circumstances in. However, it goes, Youth Offenders Act, that list, is not the same as circumstance of the event, or the whole circumstance of the event. And that is why we are against the amendment. And also, if this amendment does go through, as a previous one didn't go through, it will cause a massive mishap of the bill, and it will be a legal joke.
The question is that the words "to be deleted" be deleted. The Honourable Tammy-Ann Caldwell.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. The Honourable Tammy-Ann Caldwell.
Yeah.
The phrase or clause in this bill that the judges to decide whether a person is guilty or not, or the sentence they should be given, is too ambiguous. It's not set out specifically enough, and it doesn't give clear direction and safeguards for the judges to follow when they're deciding a sentence or guilty or not. This is all our amendment does. It stops it from being so ambiguous and open, and therefore you should have that in your bill. In the Young Offenders Act, these set of circumstances are already law. They're already made, laid out, and they're already law. The opposition in this bill is making a law to decide if a young person, for a judge to use to decide if a young person is guilty or not, which is in conflict with an already existing law. It doesn't change the aspect or the point of your bill. It just simply adds in more specific guidelines which are already in law for the judges to follow.
The Honourable Lewis Richards.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson.
You've already spoken on
They
this.
canon amendments.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson, the Honourable Lewis Richards. I'd first like to applaud the government for stating that we actually in this bill were given more guidelines, when this amendment were actually given more. So, a nice contradiction there. But the first thing I'd like to, that's my main issue of this, is that the term as circumstances in the event and the court sees fit, which are relatively the same. They're saying that how the court sees fit by weighing up circumstances of the event, is all over the criminal code. You look at the new section 281, which is assaults, cause and death. It's in there. It's in other parts of the case as well. All we're doing is we're creating a fair, same criminal code, which doesn't everything go, oh, but this thing's different, this thing's different. We're having a universal decision that the judicial discretion, Madam Chairperson, decides in the circumstance of the event if a sentence or community service or a suspended sentence or a detention is the best see fit in the circumstances and the offender.
The Honourable Dylan Capehorn.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. The Honourable Dylan Capehorn. The idea is that you're saying that this term, the courts thinks fit by weighing up circumstances of the event, is all throughout the criminal code, and I have no doubt that it is. However, you're dealing with young people in here, so shouldn't the regulations that define it come from the Young Offenders Act?
The question is that the words "to be deleted" be the Honourable Vlada Lemay.
The problem with the guidelines really is that they don't allow the judiciary to take in the circumstances that occurred in the incident. All it states is that the presiding judge or magistrate must take into account the nature and the seriousness of the offence. The nature can just mean from verbal assault to grievous bodily harm. It doesn't take into account what occurred, when it occurred, who else was there, where was the provocation. There is nothing in the guidelines that allow the judiciary to take that into consideration. This is why we are against this amendment, because it again constricts the judiciary, and it essentially, there's this mandatory error about it. It's telling the judiciary what it can and can't do.
The Honourable Tammy-Ann Caldwell.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. The Honourable Tammy-Ann Caldwell. The Honourable Member of the Opposition said something then that is not true. In the Young Offenders Act, this clause that we are wanting to add in place of the weighing up the circumstances says the court is to consider any information about the offender or the offence that may assist the court to decide how to dispose of the matter. So that is more or less like saying weighing up the circumstances of the event, except this is already in law and it lays it out specifically. It says in particular the nature and seriousness of the offence, the history of offences, etc. But it says any information about the offender or the offence. I do not see why you're opposing this amendment.
The question is that the words "to be deleted" be deleted. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. I believe the ayes have it. Division called. Ring the bells. I appoint the Honourable Dylan Capehorn as teller for the ayes and the Honourable Lewis Richards as tellers for the noes. The noes should move to the left of the chair, the ayes to the right of the chair. Lock the doors.
Nine ayes. 10 nays.
Nays 10, ayes 9. The amendment is lost. The question is that Clause 5 stand as printed. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, no. I believe the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The question is...
I'm not sure if there's a clause 6.
Is there a clause 6?
Sure. Can I just have a look? Sorry.
Appendix.
Oh, there's appendix, yeah.
The question is that the appendix stand as printed. All those in favour say aye. To the contrary, no.
Opposition agreed on the...
Opposition agreed. All those in favour say aye. To the contrary, no. I believe the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The question is that this be the name of the bill.
I would like to talk, is it possible to talk to the opposition about the actual writing of the bill, because I think public officer and the definition in the thing of what the bill is different, and it's actually, it was emergency service and personnel when we handed it in, it was changed after, until we actually saw it.
There's
on the
no
internet.
amendment in here of that.
Yeah, no, but I've just picked it up just then. And like, I only saw, like, I only just recognised it till this moment, and it's really contrary. It's like, you know, for the child protection bill when we had paedophilia and child sex offender, it means different things. Public offender, I think in the criminal code includes staff, and public officers, staff of the ministry and all that stuff, of the government, and other things as well. So I think it should just be fair if there's a unanimity throughout the whole bill. That's up to if you're all for that.
The question is that leave be granted for a further amendment to the bill. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, no. I believe the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The Honourable Lewis Richards, if you'd care to put your amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson, the Honourable Lewis Richards. I move to delete the words public officer and substitute with emergency services personnel. So then the short title of the bill will read Criminal Code Amendment brackets Emergency Service Personnel Bill 2009.
The question is that the words to be deleted. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
All those to the contrary, no. I believe the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The question is that the name of the bill be the Criminal Code Amendment Assaults on Emergency Personnel Bill 2009. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, no. I believe the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The question is that the bill now be read for a third time. Yes, this is when you may speak.
Person, I move that the chairman report the bill to the House.
The question is that the chairman reports the bill to the House. All those of the opinion say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, no. I believe the ayes have it. The ayes have it. I haven't got your name.
That's the third reading. So just turn the page over.
Who sponsored it?
Vlada Lemake.
Okay. I call the Honourable Vlada Lemake.
Madam President, I move that the bill now be read a third time. The simple fact of the matter is that this bill does not detract from the safety of public officers, especially police officers. All we are doing here is to remove a, frankly, redneck law that stipulates what the judiciary can and can't do. It's in line with the doctrine of separation of powers. It's in line with the rule of law. The benefits simply there are no negatives to this bill. It doesn't allow criminals to run on the street. It doesn't. It rightfully restores the role of the judiciary.
The question is that the bill now be read a third time. The Honourable Tammy-Ann Caldwell.
President, the Honourable Tammy-Ann Caldwell. Tom Percy said recently, "As one who works in the law and justice industry, I am regularly embarrassed to think of what we as a community expect our young constables to put up with for about $25 an hour. Dangerous, drunken and drug-ridden Northbridge nights, attending horrific traffic accidents and murder scenes and delivering bad news to bereaved families are all par for the course. Then having to collate the evidence and potentially face intense public and legal scrutiny over any perceived shortcoming in your handling of the task. It's not an enviable prospect. Police enforce the laws we make here. FISA simply rescues people so they don't die. Hospital staff, ambulance, RFDF staff simply save people's lives. But none of these things are ever really simple. Police are often dangerous, underpaid, long-hour, complex jobs. Yet often these good people, who are heroes in the true sense of the word, attend horrific deaths and murder scenes and, like Tom Percy just said, get assaulted, usually by drunk or high on drugs individuals. They don't deserve this. They deserve protection, and they deserve to have us here provide discouragement to potential police attackers. You must remember that it's not just a tap or a push. Mandatory sentencing is for serious assaults and grievous bodily harm. So if a person is provoked and pushes or lightly punches or something, they will not be found guilty of serious assault and grievous bodily harm. That is the only thing that a person can be mandatorily sentenced for, grievous bodily harm or serious assault. Also, if you plead self-defence, the judge can use their discretion to decide whether it was serious assault, grievous bodily harm, or just plain assault or self-defence, in which case you will not get any sentence of jail or detention. Just because 96,000 criminals, as the Honourable Member of the Opposition said, were found guilty does not mean that they got sentenced to jail or anything else. What percentage got fully suspended sentences? And if you knew that you would get sent to jail or detention, you would, if you seriously assaulted police, you would think twice. A High Court judge once stated, "The necessary and ultimate justification for criminal sanctions is the protection of society from the conduct which this bill prescribes."
The question is that the bill now be read a third time. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. I believe the ayes have it. The ayes have it. It's too late.
Oh. A division be called? Can I not?
No one called divide.
Oh.
Mm. You need to be on your feet and speak to a point of order.
Voting on the bill, it's prescribed that members move out of their seats to the right or the left of the chair. Right is eyes, left is nose.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, it's the question is, like, no, it's saying that, like, we automatically do it.
I'll call for the vote again, being that this is a conscience vote and it should have deferred to an automatic division. The question is that the bill now be read a third time. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. I call for the ayes to move to the right of my chair, the noes to move to the left of my chair. Ring the bells. lock the doors. I appoint the Honourable Lewis Richards as teller for the ayes and the Honourable Dylan Caporn as teller for the noes.
Nine ayes.
I have ayes 9, noes 8. I believe the ayes have it. The question is that the Western Australian YMCA Legislative Council agree that the bill now be read for a third time. Third reading. Personal comment. I think it's unfortunate that the Nationals and Independents chose not to be in the House for the division on behalf of the government. I've enjoyed your debate today. I wasn't expecting to get comment. Normally, standing orders in the Legislative Assembly, the acting Speaker doesn't get to offer any opinion or contribute to debate. And I think I shall honour that convention and not bore you with my own oxygen wasting and opinions on the bill that's in front of the House today, except to say that if you're considering the costs of legislation, you might like to consider the inclusion of 100,000 public officers and the administrative burden that that might place on the state, should they be included in the Mandatory Sentencing Act. I move now.
Because we've got so much spare time, we're going to be doing an MPI on daylight saving. And so... Sorry? What? Yep, okay, yep, sure. Not a problem.
Well, the question is that standing orders be suspended in order that an MPI on daylight saving be considered. All those in favour say aye.
Aye. Awakeness, please. Guys, wake up.
To the contrary, no. I believe the ayes have it. The
Business of the day, order number 7. The matter of public interest, standing under the name of, who wants to move it? Dylan Caporn.
The Honourable Dylan Caporn.
The Democratic... thank you, Madam President. The Honourable Dylan Caporn. The democratic will of the people is constantly being ignored. And I can state this confidently because over the last 3 decades we've had four, Madam President, referendums on the ridiculous issue of daylight savings. Daylight savings has been opposed 4 times. Why do we continually ignore the people? I move today that we... Am I promoting daylight?
Is that your discretion?
Is that my discretion? I promote that for 3 decades we do not have a referendum on daylight savings.
Hear,
hear.
The Honourable Lewis Richards.
Thank you, Madam President. The Honourable Lewis Richards. I come from a nation where obviously we would do need daylight savings, and there's many arguments that we don't need daylight savings over here. But my personal opinion is that we should have daylight savings in the summer. The issue, and the leader of the government, to say it's a good point, goes, they've had 4 now referendums now, it's 4 referendums now, and they've all been no's. I think the recent one's been the highest no vote. 80% of people voted of that. It was a compulsory, but 80%. That is 400,000 people. I'm not saying that all people would have voted yes, but there was only a roughly about 300,000 gap between yes and no's. So I'm saying there was a potential possibility that people who couldn't vote, and that's their democratic belief to not vote on a compulsory issue, there is. So what I say about daylight savings, why we should have it. It has potential. It has benefits, Madam President. It has that present. It does have. I mean, we now go on to Sydney time, and although people may debate that we trade with Asian partners, who is, I think, the timeline we are on is the second most demographically populated one of the lot. According to the leader of the Western Farmers Union, when in the speech he did at our university about this. But that's wrong. We need to be on the eastern states, the same timeline, because it is essential that when the business people do with is the eastern states, so we need to be with it. And also, I'm a big sport lover. I love to have the extra hour of sunlight, inverted commas, during the summer, where I can sit there and relax and play some sport after work.
Madam President.
The Honourable Georgia O'Keefe.
I would like to point out that the government's argument on referendums is false. Yes, 4 referendums on daylight savings have been held in the last 3 decades, and they have all failed. Since this country's federation, there have been 44 referendums, 8 of which have passed. The people don't like referendums. They don't. People don't understand the questions, they vote no. People don't have an opinion, they vote no. Lots of people, young people, can't have an opinion in referendums, and it is the majority of the young people who vote for daylight savings. I'd also like to point out that referendums are not the way to solve this issue, as in our system of government, in the Westminster mutation, we have representative government. Parliament has a mandate to the people to make decisions on our behalf. They shouldn't give us referendums to make bills, because it is Parliament's responsibility to make bills.
The Honourable Luke Allery.
Madam President, the point of the referendums appears to be the point of this argument. And the fact is, we need a referendums because they do accurately represent and show the opinions of those who have voted. Why would a person?
Do you want daylight savings or not?
If the question asks, do you want daylight savings or not, and the person votes no, I think it's quite simple that it means they don't want daylight savings. The fact is, although we represent our electorates and regions, we cannot know the opinions of every single person. We cannot get the general gist unless we speak to everyone, or at least a large proportion, to be accurate. Referendums are the most accurate way because it allows the person to voice their own opinion. Yes, it is. But can you speak to every member of your electorate?
The majority of them.
No, so then you cannot be accurate.
Order, members. The Honourable Luke Allery has the call.
You cannot deny that referendums show accurately. Yes, that is what we're talking about, because he said we are talking about referendums. He moved to the House that we not have another referendum on daylight savings for 3 decades. That was the movement, and that is the topic.
The Honourable Vlada Lemag.
Thank you, Madam President. The Honourable Vlada Lemag. I'll give this chamber one of the reasons why the recent push for daylight savings was rejected, because of the despicable advertising campaign that the West Australian Farmers Association ran, showing that if daylight savings was introduced, there'd be more crashes on our roads because of fatigue. This is apparently why we shouldn't have daylight savings. I kid you not. The RAC went out again. The RAC came out and said this is despicable. There was no action against them. This is propaganda. This is fear mongering. This is the only way, Madam President, that the West Australian Farmers Association can convince people to vote against daylight savings, because frankly there is no rationale to vote against it.
The Honourable Ian Garlett.
The Honourable Ian Garlett. When the Honourable Luke Allery referred to the referendums being representative of the will of the people, obviously referring to the referendum on daylight savings earlier, that's not always the point. The fact is, daylight savings was defeated because of the question. The question isn't always that simple. And moving on to the point, daylight savings has many many benefits for such as people who work late may enjoy extra hours with their children. It can fight childhood obesity, and you can get them. They've got an extra hour, and parents can spend more time with kids, and they can promote a healthy lifestyle instead of condemning them to a life of Xbox and TV and all this other.
The Honourable Lou Callery.
The fact is you are not losing an hour. You are merely taking one from the morning and adding it to the evening.
They're saying an
But
extra hour at night.
you're moving everything forward. But the thing with daylight savings is this is only applicable to Western Australia. And if you look at the shopping hours, our shopping hours start at 8, unlike 9, which they are in other states. We are, and it is accepted as a general fact that Western Australia is a morning state. We get things done in the morning. Sporting people. Sporting people get their training done for the morning. I see more people going for runs and jogs in the morning than in the evening. The fact is, you can get things done in the morning. You cannot claim that we are getting an extra hour to the evening without recognising the fact... Can I please be heard in silence? Without recognising the fact that you are losing one in the morning. That is the importance of daylight saving, and you need to recognise this.
The Honourable Lauren Goodhart.
Honourable Lauren Goodhart. I think that when the daylight savings hullabaloo first came out, it was quite obvious that farmers decided that they didn't want their daylight savings because the cows would be confused. Cows don't wear Rolex watches, Madam Speaker. Cows don't know the difference between 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. It doesn't matter. And exactly, that's correct. And in reference to the honourable members putting an hour at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether it's at... It does matter, whether it's at the beginning or the end of the day. At the end of the day, our culture is to sit back, relax, enjoy friends, enjoy company and spend time with family. You can't do that at 7 o'clock in the morning or even earlier because I can guarantee a very minimal amount could. Most people are night people. And so this allows our culture and our social... what's the word? Yep, to be expanded.
The Honourable Georgia O'Keefe.
President, the Honourable Georgia O'Keefe. Going along with the Honourable Vlada Lemec's point earlier about the media, another point that I would like to bring up is around just like a couple of weeks or something like that before the referendum was put, Today Tonight held a special in which I was present in the room listening to all of the different arguments, and it was very interesting, very biased but very interesting. All of the facts that were put up on the screen telling us about things in America. First of all, they don't relate to Australia at all. They were all anti-daylight savings, of course. First of all, they don't relate to Australia at all. And second of all, they were all on the negative side of daylight savings, and it is incredibly biased. Lots of people tune in into Today Tonight. A lot of this country is made up of uneducated people and can be easily swayed by the media. And things... No, I'm saying there is a...
The Honourable Lewis Richards, I hope you're on your feet defending the intelligence of the Western Australian public.
Thank you, Madam President. The Honourable Lewis Richards, I say I would not pass my family to move to such an unintelligent state. May I just add that? But it is fact, not just Western Australians, but English people or the whole world are ignorant at most things. They are easily swayed. I'm not saying they're intelligent. There's a difference between intelligence and being gullible. Here. It is a key. But as the Honourable Luke Ellery said, for one, his few points he said all day, which are correct. This is about referendums. The question was, ban referendums and daylight savings. Many people could say, yes, we do enjoy daylight savings, Madam President. We do like referendum. But if we get this about referendums, so if you think that you really want to keep voting on it, then you say no to this thing. But referendums, they do not really show the actual beliefs of the thing. I think in the 1930s they had referendums on the roles of Jews in Nazi Germany after they've had constant campaigns of Jewish propaganda. And they all said, yes, we should send them to concentration camps. I mean, is that reliable? I wouldn't say so, because they've been propagandized. The no vote did, and to say that the yes vote didn't do enough campaigning is a say, but no vote's ignorance. There are still people, that's the conclusion, that still think there's 25 hours in a day in the summer. So how about we just get all facts on the table and then have the referendum. If all facts are on the table and there's a no, then we may have less referendums.
Madam President.
The Honourable Sophie Burke.
Referendums in the next 30 years because the younger generations, majority of the younger generations probably agree with daylight savings. This is because if it is lighter at the end of the day, parents are generally going to let you stay out longer, other than my honourable friend here who does all his socialising in the mornings.
He's one of a kind.
The younger generations are probably going to agree with this more because, as my honourable friend said, whispered to me before, she finishes work at 7. She can still go chill with friends afterwards because it's still light. Parents would probably also agree with this too because they feel safer about their kids when it's lighter in the afternoons.
Here.
Madam President.
The Honourable Tammy-Ann Caldwell.
And it's got a simple yes or no answer and it affects lots of people, then you can put that question to everyone over 18 and then get a representative result, which is what they do. It is very representative. When you've got, in this last referendum, you had a yes or no answer, okay? I worked at the referendum. We handed out the ballot paper to each person and we said, here's the ballot paper. You wrote yes or no in the box. Yes if you want daylight savings, no if you don't. And we handed it on. We said this, all of us, to every single person. How much simpler can it get? Second of all, young people might be the largest sector that wants daylight savings, but they are not the largest sector of WA's population. And until they are, we cannot say yes when the people say no. The majority of people have voted 4 times and they have said no. We're not a dictatorship to go against what the people want. We're a democracy. And that's what democracy means, rule by the people. Rule by the people. No, over 18. They are counted as reasonable people able to make good decisions. Do you want under 18s to be able to vote on things like whether we should have GST, whether we should become a monarchy or not? They're under 18.
Madam President.
The Honourable Michael Bovell.
Thank you, Madam President. The Honourable Michael Bovell. I wish to thank the Honourable Clerk for suggesting the debate about daylight savings. Daylight savings does not go far enough. Changing the time zone to the eastern states time will give us the extra sunlight all year round, especially in winter when it is needed more.
The Honourable Luke Ellery.
I'm the opposition. For those who want daylight saving have appeared to contradict themselves in 2 points. One, they have shown that referendums do not represent the young people of Western Australia. Fair enough. However, they have also stated that the media has had too much of an influence on the referendums and has not been fairly represented for the yes side. But doesn't that contradict itself? Aren't the young people the minds that are more easily susceptible to the media? Isn't it why we have media bans on certain things we have media bans on certain advertisings during children's shows because we do not want the young minds susceptible to the media. There are certain aspects and it is a contradiction.
Order, members. The Honourable Luke Ellery has the call.
The fact is that this is a contradiction. Now there are other many things against daylight saving that has not been taken into account. For one, if you move an extra hour to the evening, you are therefore prolonging the sunlight into the evening, and that means higher energy bills, use of air conditioners, and other things such as electricity and factors like that, which will... Yes, but I thought in the morning we'd do nothing. We do nothing in the morning, according to... time's up.
The Honourable Amy Leathersich.
Thank you, Madam President. The Honourable Amy Leathersich. You're saying that that's going to increase electricity bills and stuff. Well, it's not, because it's going to be light until later. And like you said that we said we don't do anything in the morning. So if we don't do anything in the morning, why would we have our lights on? Like, we're going to sleep in, we're going to turn them on later in the afternoon because it's lighter till later. And all it does, if it is going to change it, like you said, and it doesn't, like they said, we do turn them on in the morning, all it's doing is shifting it an hour forwards. It's not adding to it, it's not taking away, it's just shifting it. So it's not going to increase our light and energy bills. But yeah, exactly. Socialising isn't using energy. I'm not burning coal to socialise. It's annoying. I'm like, ooh.
The Honourable Dylan Capon.
Honourable Dylan Capon. I suppose I better clarify why I don't want a referendum on daylight savings for the next 3 decades, because I believe that Parliament should be doing it. Parliament should be passing the vote on this. Because if only 80%, and I can tell you this, because when I asked several people, how'd you vote in the referendum, they said, did we have to vote? People don't understand, and this goes towards the ignorance of the West Australian people, that they don't know that it was compulsory. So we need further education if a referendum is to go ahead. At least politicians understand that when the bells ring, they have to vote.
The Honourable Vlada
Yes.
LeMay.
Thank you, Madam President. The Honourable Vlada LeMay. I don't suggest that the majority of people in the world are ignorant. I have the belief that the problem at root is that the media is influential to such an extent that, for instance, young, impressionable minds such as ourselves can be easily influenced one way or the other. When you have a conservatist program like Today Tonight pushing some no agenda or whatever with no valid facts, very loosely researched, highly opinionated, absolutely sensationalized material, you have people voting for something that they have no idea about. Not only that, okay, let's not get too caught up in the economic benefits for or against. I'm not an economist, but I'm guessing that there's slight benefits either for or against. I'm not too sure. This issue comes down to personal preference. Not only that, but if this matter of public interest is trying to ban any sort of referendum about daylight savings for the next 30 years, quite frankly, that is a form of censorship. This is denying people the right to express an opinion. Are we going to go down the road of China or another highly authoritarian country? I don't think so. The issue at hand here is whether or not you want daylight savings. Personally, there are all the issues, you spend more time with family afterwards, or the plethora of issues that are there. But please, let's also have in mind that the reasons for no are highly, highly sensationalised in the media.
The Honourable Gemma Lee.
I think the idea of taking away the referendum for daylight savings is ridiculous. You're not giving future generations a chance to vote on it. I would have actually voted no if I could in the referendum, specifically for the idea that it didn't finish in February, it finished in March. But me living on 5 acres and have to leave at 7:30 in the morning to have an extra hour at the end of the day where I can actually do stuff on this 5 acres is absolutely brilliant. And to take this vote away from me, I just wouldn't believe in our political system and our parliament anymore.
The Honourable Lewis Richards.
The Honourable Lewis Richards. As the opposing on the other side of the chambers, Deputy Leader of the Government, as rightly said, this is about referendums. It's not about daylight savings. It's actually not about it. It's actually about referendums. The question is, do we stop? There's a ban on referendums that extends 30 years. Well, even though there's been no votes, there's still a 46, 47%, I think 45%. I think the recent thing was saying yes. That is still a substantial amount.
Yeah.
So it goes up. We still should, for the little guy, which the government and the opposition have been talking about all these couple of days, Madam's President. He goes, we should always let the little guy be heard. And like, even though there's many 45, 46, 47% saying yes, that's still a significant number. That wouldn't even be that would even stop. Even that's failed at 50%. That would stop a constitutional debate. And even though referendums can be flawed, I mean, like the media that has influenced significantly the last referendum, goes like it is still a democratic right of each person that when it comes to a matter which is solely affects them directly, they should be able to vote on it. And other matters such as regulating trade now, which affects more the business people, then that should be something which the legislation depends, and the actual referendum of this. And also to state the fact that it ended in March. What the you would have voted no because the fact that it was ended in March. There was speculation. I think one independent, John Bowler, stated that he would actually, with a private amendment to the bill when it went through Parliament, change it to February. This was not told in the media, and that significantly, from research showed, is a lot of people why they voted no in this bill. Amendment, whatever it is.
The Honourable Luke Kovac.
Referendum.
Madam President, Honourable Luke Kovac. Madam President, the point was raised earlier that our politicians should have the vote as they represent their constituents of their area. They should therefore vote for them. I would be the member for my general area, and I happen to know for a fact that the members of Karratha, one of the reasons the turnouts were so low was because they're sick of it. They're sick of the referendum. They don't want to keep voting on something they have voted on so many times as a no. Okay, they actively boycotted the referendum. Not many people. The turnout in that general area was quite low.
Madam President.
The Honourable Dylan Capehorn.
And Capehorn. And I'd like to thank the honourable member opposite. Are you the member for Karratha? Mining Pastoral. We thank you because you found the missing 20% and you've put it on Hansard, so thank you very much. This is exactly the reason why. This is exactly the reason why the referendums need to be stopped. Because people are sick of them. They're sick of them. Which is why, in 3 decades' time, when you have a whole new group of young people come through, they will have the vote. What? You'll have a whole group of young people come through and then they'll have the vote. I'm saying suspend it for 30 years so that we can wait for the other that little small group of elderly people to move up and move on. So the youth move up and we get daylight savings.
The Honourable Lauren Goodhart.
When I spoke to people around my area regarding daylight savings, a lot of people said, the fine's only $100. I'd prefer to pay that than walk down to my local, primary school. So you know what? Charge them $1,000.
The Honourable Ian Garlick.
Honourable Ian Garlick. Let me say that a referendum's fate can be dependent on a government's stance on the issue. Yet, yes, we have had 4 referendums on daylight savings, and people may say, how many more referendums may we have until people finally get the message? Does anyone here know anyone who's actually voted no in all 4 referendums? And just want the issue to be dead and buried? The fact is, these referendums have been fairly spaced between each other because this marks the dawn of a new generation. Daylight savings referendums should continue to be held. Should they all be fairly spaced and not too close to each other? I just look forward to hearing how much the next referendum on daylight savings costs.
The Honourable Luke Hallery.
Referendums is a good one, and the fact is that over time people's opinions can change. Now, I do, however, think that 30 years is too large a gap. There could be a sooner change. What if within 15 years the people of Australia suddenly, like very well expressed here, decide they don't want daylight savings? How can we account for the 15 years, therefore, that we deny them the right to express that opinion. Referendums have worked well because they provide a simple yes or no answer. For example, looking back on the case on whether Australia was asked whether they'd like to be a republic or a commonwealth, people were given the simple referendum. That was the entire country doing a referendum on the issue. And the fact is, we have remained a commonwealth because of
to
it.
their advantage.
People don't want to be a commonwealth. People want to become a republic.
It was the model proposed.
The question was ridiculous.
Now we
The
are.
Honourable Luke Ellery has the floor, has the call.
Thank you. The fact is that we cannot deny people the right to vote. We cannot put a ban on referendums as we are banning the right for people to voice their opinion. How can the government condone doing this? Referendums allow the people to say. Now, people have pointed out that people are sick of referendums, but the fact that they have chosen not to vote is representative of their opinion. If they don't vote, then they have voiced the opinion. You've said people's opinion are that they don't want to vote because they're sick of it. That is their opinion. In not voting, they have shown they're sick of it. And that is why we need referendums to continue, so we can continue to hear the opinion of the people.
The Honourable Vlada Lemag.
I think we've well and truly exhausted the actual daylight savings debate. This issue is in terms of whether or not a referendum should be called within the next 30 years. That right, there should not be a ban. That right should exist. Whether or not a government or a politician is going to be stupid enough to call another referendum, that's another question. Because of the horrendous track record of these referendums in general. I mean, what was the statistics? 8 out of 36? 8 out of 44, there we go. And this isn't just because people are against the referendum in general, this is because of the way these questions are structured and the way these questions are presented and the media and all that surrounding it. By banning the right to have a referendum for 30 years it's censorship. It's, as was said before by the Honourable Member opposite, it does not allow the public to voice its own opinion.
The Honourable Georgia O'Keefe.
President, the Honourable Georgia O'Keefe. I believe that the only way referendums should continue is if we decrease the age from 18 to 16 optional.
The Honourable Sophie Burke.
Thank you, Mrs. President. Madam President, Honourable Sophie Burke. The difference between the votes was what, like 5%? The yes vote only won by, no vote only won by about 5%. Waiting 30 years is just plain ridiculous because, as my honourable member said over here, people are going to move on in the world. I'm trying to put it nicely. Even 3 years could be enough to change that vote. It's something small like 5%. I don't know the actual... 9, sorry. Yeah, that 9% could, if we get... and if we change it to 16, we can get younger people to vote. We can stop media from being so involved in a negative way. And we can encourage more people to vote because this could be the final referendum and we can finally get daylight savings.
The Honourable Lewis Richards.
Thank you, President. Lewis Richards. Let's get back to the actual issue of the question, which is about the referendums. We're going around tangents on daylight savings as people are slowly moving towards the actual question, Madam Speaker, which is just about time it's actually been done. But one opinion I have, reservation I have about referendums, Madam President, is that, for example, daylight savings affects people who work. People can start work in Australia when they're 14. There's age of 14, 15, 16, 17 and 18 and 17, which would like to know what they have an opinion of how they spend their time after, before or during work. And people go, oh, what about the actual right to vote in an election? Well, a lot of the main of the election is how governments use their tax revenue to spend. And you only paying tax, I think, when you're 18. So how about we start certainly to move and to change and manipulate, Madam President, the actual age of the vote. I'm not saying it's rational that we have 8-year-olds voting on something which they have no idea about and just tell what their mummies and daddies do. But we need to fairly show the demographics and populations of who it affects directly. And that's what a referendum should be. And therefore, we should have referendums because it is a democratic view of life. And we live in a democracy, not a dictatorship.
The Honourable Dylan Capone.
Madam President, the Honourable Dylan Capon. I'd like to reflect on the Honourable George O'Keefe's comments that the voting age for referendums should be lowered. I actually support this because for the ideas, the young people are the future. They are the young people of the future. Therefore, they need to be able to vote on what their future is going to be. Thank you.
The Honourable Luke Ellery.
Luke Ellery, I also support the age lowering. I think that what we should do is actually leave it to the discretion of the Parliament in relevance to the issue on who gets to vote to it. So if the issue is relevant to those who are maybe to the age of 14, then those should have the right to be able to vote for that issue because it is applicable to them. So it would be wrong to not allow the young people to be able to vote if daylight savings applies to them.
The Honourable Vlada Lemake.
Thank you, Madam President, the Honourable Vlada Lemake. What I find interesting is that under 18s are able to pay taxes, they're able to participate in this youth parliament, but they cannot vote on referendums which are, quite frankly, simple in nature. You don't need a degree to figure out what daylight savings is all about. I mean, look, well, mind you, I'm going to move away from turning this into a debate about lowering the voting age, but quite frankly, banning referendums on daylight savings for 30 years is not only does the idea itself a slightly right wing, but the 30 years is just way too long.
The Honourable Lauren Goodhart.
Thank you, Madam President. The Honourable Lauren Goodhart. If we talk about banning all referendums for 30 years, by the time 30 years comes around, I'm going to be 50 years old, well, almost 47 years old. Therefore, I'm going to be the same age as the demographics that are stopping us from having daylight savings now.
The Honourable Rachel Moles.
Honourable Rachel Moles. People here seem to think that the only people who said no to daylight savings are those who are old and about to die, or those who are easily swayed. But there is a fair portion of people who live in the north of this state where it is very hot during the day and you don't really want an extra hour of heat. And also, lots of sporting events have to be delayed even later into the night because you cannot play sport in the heat.
The Honourable Gemma Lee.
Thank you, Madam President. The Honourable Gemma Lee. I hate to say this, but I think once again we're not talking about daylight savings, we're talking about referendums. Yeah, but we're talking about banning referendums on daylight savings. So it would just be easy if we stuck to that instead of going off about daylight savings.
The Honourable Vlada Lemake.
Thank you, Madam President. The Honourable Vlada Lemake. As the Honourable Member opposite just pointed out, the point of this matter of MPI is whether or not we should ban referendums on daylight savings. I am quite frankly petrified at the idea of banning a referendum. What sort of precedent does that open to banning referendums on other contentious issues that a government may or may not want in the public interest?
The Honourable George O'Keefe.
Madam President, the Honourable George O'Keefe. I agree with what the Honourable Vlada Lemake is saying. I think that instead of saying that we ban referendums for 30 years, we strongly advise the government of each day that they don't hold referendums until either the demographics change or we introduce a lower voting age, because it's not about the generations, it's about age groups. Or there's a number of institutional factors that need to be addressed before we hold another referendum, and so instead of banning referendums, we just advise the government that they don't hold another referendum for a while.
The Honourable Lewis Richards.
Thank you, Madam President. The Honourable Lewis Richards. Let's take a couple of statements first. I am kind of ashamed of this council chamber at the start. That is actually the best debating we've had all day, and it's about an MPI which is basically irrelevant. It's just been talked about. So like, I would just like to plan if like in future when it comes to the bills we get a bit more liveliness going around the President. And also I'd like to apologise to making another tangent which people have gone and not related to the bill, as taking time out of your busy schedule, and I'm just wasting people's time. Now, okay.
It's very normal, I can assure you.
I know, but thank you. Look, yep. We're back to the whole actual question once more, which is fantastic. It's not democratic. I don't know the correct term. It might correct me there. It's public school education, it's the right to vote is one of the reasons why Western societies and many societies can be civilised, yes, and of course they do, and that's why they fairly elect people in. But it's the reason why we're here. It goes, we here make conscience votes in youth parliaments. So it's basically, we have many referendums about ideas in every little thing we do, even outside, even questions which are not even referendums. We have referendums inside our heads. It's like, do we go to the Amber? Do we go to the Carnegies? Do we go to Thing? We go yes, no. The opinion is yes, no. So we need these. We need these. We actually do need referendums, and just because people say no after a few times, there's still a need for it, because there's a democratic reason why we live in a country like Australia.
The Honourable Tammy Ann Caldwell.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, Madam President. The Honourable Tammy Ann Caldwell. In the last 20 or so years, we've had 4 referendums on daylight savings, so that the young people in the first one would have been older by 20 years or so in the last one, yet they still said no.
Did they? Shows facts.
You're talking about age. I'm talking about age. They're 20 years old and they still say no, but you reckon in 30 years' time you're going to say something different.
Say no, or do you just stipulating it?
Okay. But we're a democracy, okay? I voted no, but we are a democracy, and I think that we definitely need referendums. We should never get rid of referendums. Would the people in this chamber agree to another daylight savings referendum in 5 years?
Yes.
And not before?
The Honourable Lou Tallery.
Madam President, I think this is one of the issues that has keep coming up. I think that everyone in this House has agreed that we do need referendums, as they do show the voice of the opinions of people, but there has been the issues that have been raised that sometimes people get sick of referendums. So my question is then to the House, at what length should we space the referendums? How should we sort of use our discretion to determine whether the public wants a referendum or if it's needed?
The Honourable Lewis Richards.
Thank you, Madam President. The Honourable Lewis Richards. Reasons why this recent amendment for referendum for daylight savings went through, there was a drive to politicians and to the media and certain other factors like, yes, we need daylight savings. So if there's enough voice of the people, for example, if enough people go to Parliament, Madam President, and say we want mandatory sentencing, then there should be a referendum, because it's a key which matters. It does affect everyone, because everyone can eventually one day, I hope it doesn't happen, but someone can assault someone, and it does happen. Circumstances do account. So referendums are key, and I would just like to, we can wrap this up now, because we're just going on tangents and circles, and I think all of us would like to get out of this chamber. We've been here for a long time.
The Honourable Dylan Capon.
I move that we go to the vote. Yes.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no.
No.
I believe the noes have it.
No, I'm not going to.
Don't we have to division anyway?
Yeah, isn't it automatic? Just for fun. Yeah.
Division call. Ring the bells.
So this is no. So this is no. Cool.
The motion was that there's no referendum for 30 years.
Yeah.
The motion is.
I'm actually sick of
The motion is that we put.
The thing to vote. Oh,
Yeah, but are we banning referendums for 30 years?
This is
I'm actually trying to let you
explain.
know what you're voting on. The motion is that we put the motion.
So we're voting on whether we should go to vote.
The motion is that we vote.
Oh, right.
That's how it works, I'm afraid.
Sorry, aye. We'll do division anyway. So.
So the motion, the outcome of the motion that the question be put was no, which means debate, I would assume, is you want to continue with debate.
Sorry.
I move
Perhaps
again
you-
that we go to a vote.
The question is that the motion be put. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, no. I believe the ayes have it.
Yeah, here we
the
go.
ayes have it. The question is. No. The question is that the motion be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. To the contrary, no. No. I believe the noes have it. The motion is lost. The noes have it. You need to say divide if you want to divide. Orders of the day.
No more general business.
Somebody needs to move that the House adjourn. The question is that the House be adjourned. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, no.
I want to stay here
I
for
believe the
some
ayes have it.
I believe the noes have it.
The noes have it. You can stay here tonight. Thank you.
I would love to camp in here. How fun would it be?